A very good morning, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Asean-Indo-Pacific Forum 2025. To all of our guests who are still in the foyer, we welcome you to please make your way into the hall and take your seats as the forum will commence shortly. The event is co-hosted by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Indonesia and the Indonesian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Kadin, Indonesia, with the Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia as our knowledge partner, in collaboration with ASEAN Business Advisory Council Malaysia and the Kuala Lumpur Business Club and Dana, Indonesia. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, we do welcome you to make your way into the hall and take your seats. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, we do invite you to please make your way into the halls and take your seats. Please do settle in and settle down as we will be starting shortly. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, please do take your seats as we are expecting the arrival of our distinguished guests. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please do take your seats as the arrival of the Prime Minister of Australia, the Honourable Anthony Albanese, will be arriving shortly. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, please do take your seats. The Prime Minister has arrived and is with us, and he will be making his entrance shortly. Thank you. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, please rise as we welcome the Prime Minister of Australia, the Honourable Anthony Albanese, as he makes his entrance. Ladies and gentlemen, you may now take your seats.
ASEAN, home to over 700 million people, is on its way to becoming one of the fastest growing regions in the global economy. ASEAN is currently the fifth largest economy in the world, with a combined nominal GDP of more than $4 trillion. ASEAN lies at the very heart of the Indo-Pacific, one of the most dynamic and promising regions in the world. Spanning the Asia-Pacific and Indian Ocean areas, this region has long been a vital hub of economic growth and development. In 2023, Indonesia established the Asean-Indo-Pacific Forum during its ASEAN chairmanship, a platform that amplifies ASEAN's voice and leadership in shaping a shared vision for regional cooperation. The forum was convened as a concrete manifestation of the ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific, bringing together leaders from government and business to foster inclusive growth, resilience, and sustainable development across the region. There are 4 priority areas that lay the groundwork for enhanced collaboration under the ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific framework. First, maritime cooperation. Protecting and sustaining shared oceans, promoting responsible marine resource use, ensuring maritime safety and security, and fostering peace across our seas. Second, connectivity. Strengthening physical, institutional, and people-to-people linkages, from transport and logistics to digital networks and smart urban solutions to boost competitiveness and regional integration. Third, advancing the UN Sustainable Development Goals, aligning ASEAN's growth with global aspirations through the digital and green economy, community empowerment, and inclusive sustainable progress. Fourth, broad economic cooperation, promoting trade, investment, innovation, and technology, while supporting small and medium enterprises to secure shared prosperity across the Indo-Pacific. Together, these 4 priority areas reflect ASEAN's commitment to centrality, inclusivity, and cooperation, providing a clear framework to guide dialogue, partnership, and practical actions across ASEAN and the wider Indo-Pacific region. Today, we look forward to making the ASEAN-Indo-Pacific even stronger, our shared platform to foster more powerful partnerships, driving mutual growth and shared prosperity across the region. Thank you for joining us in the ASEAN-Indo-Pacific Forum and in our shared vision for the future.
Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to the ASEAN-Indo-Pacific Forum 2025. Advancing inclusivity and sustainability in ASEAN and the Indo-Pacific region, organized by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Indonesia and the Indonesian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Kadin, Indonesia. It is our honor to welcome the Honourable Anthony Albanese, Prime Minister of Australia, His Excellency Erlangga Hartarto, Coordinating Minister of the Economic Affairs of the Republic of Indonesia, on behalf of the President of the Republic of Indonesia, His Excellency Prabowo Subianto, His Excellency Nicholas Moore, AO, Special Envoy of Australia for Southeast Asia, Mr. Anindya Bakri, Chair of the ASEAN Business Advisory Council, Indonesia, and Chairman of the Indonesian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Kadin, Indonesia. Tan Sri Nazir Razak, Chair of ASEAN Business Advisory Council 2025. And we also extend our warmest welcome to all esteemed ministers, ambassadors, and distinguished guests, delegates, ladies and gentlemen. We wish to acknowledge that the President of the Republic of Indonesia, His Excellency Prabowo Subianto, who had graciously intended to be with us here today, but unfortunately is unable to join us due to unforeseen circumstances. His Excellency Prabowo Subianto has extended his warmest greetings and best wishes for the success of the ASEAN-Indo-Pacific Forum 2025 and his continued support for ASEAN's collective progress. The ASEAN-Indo-Pacific Forum stands as ASEAN's flagship platform to operationalize the ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific, translating its key priorities: maritime cooperation, connectivity, sustainable development, and the economic cooperation into tangible and impactful initiatives that uphold ASEAN's centrality while fostering inclusive regional collaboration across the Indo-Pacific. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is now with great pleasure that we welcome the Chair of the ASEAN Business Advisory Council, Indonesia, and Chairman of the Indonesian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Kadin, Indonesia, Mr. Anindya Bakri, to please share with us his opening remarks.
His Excellencies, Anthony Albanese, Prime Minister of Australia, thank you very much for coming to our event. Representing the President of the Republic of Indonesia, His Excellency Erlangga Hartarto, His Excellency Nicholas Moore, Australian Special Envoy to Southeast Asia, and my dear friend Tan Sri Razak, Chairman of ASEAN BAC 2025, a very successful one. And I see also John Denton, the Secretary General of International Chambers of Commerce, coming here. Excellencies, ministers, ambassadors, fellow ASEAN BAC Council members, distinguished captains of the industries, ladies and gentlemen. Excellencies, a very good morning to you all. Welcome to the ASEAN-Indo-Pacific Forum 2025, or Aipf. It is an honor for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Indonesia, together with Kadin Indonesia, or Indonesia Chamber of Commerce and Industry, to reconvene the Aipf for the third time at the 47th ASEAN Summit, alongside ASEAN BAC Malaysia and partners such as AREA, KLBC, and DANA. The Aipf brings together ASEAN states and Indo-Pacific partners to focus on tangible and practical cooperation, also public-private partnership. This year's theme brings advancing inclusivity and sustainability in ASEAN and in the Indo-Pacific region, builds on the Malaysia's ASEAN chairmanship. This week, we welcome Timor-Leste as ASEAN's 11th member state and celebrate the 20th anniversary of the East Asia Summit. This year, we also mark 70th years since the Bandung Conference, which paved the way for decolonization and formation of the non-aligned movement. Ladies and gentlemen, the world of 2025 is beset by the largest and challenging conflicts in Europe since 1945. The Global Peace Index 2025 shows 59 active conflicts globally, the most since the World War II, and 3 more than prior year. World Economic Forum latest risk assessment notes that armed conflict risk is ranked top of the global threat for the near term by experts. The Indo-Pacific is also heating up, not just economically, but geopolitically. It is vital position at the crossroads of global commerce leaves it vulnerable to being pulled into the stormy seas of renewed great power rivalry, echoing the tensions of a Cold War 2.0. However, amidst everything, ASEAN remains a global bright spot. In these unprecedented times, I am proud to say ASEAN continues to shine as a pillar of growth, stability, and shared progress. ASEAN's economy is expanding strongly with growth of around 4.6% in 2024, significantly outpacing developed markets. Indonesia is also proud, as we have consistently recognized this, and hence our 2020 chairmanship theme was ASEAN Matters, Epicentrum of Growth. There is no small part due to how we do things here. ASEAN remains and will always be open for business to all. And again, thank you very much, Prime Minister Albanese, for always having ASEAN as a top priority of your agenda. I still remember, Prime Minister, 2023 with Nicholas Moore launched a nice book with you in the opening. And as a result, in the last 2 to 3 years, we see trade and investment coming very strong from your end to ASEAN, and we thank you for that. Indonesia, as Pak Coordinating Minister Erlangga will say, will certainly do its part to support the President's vision with ambitious target of 8% growth rate. Our presence this year's ASEAN Summit is a manifestation of just that. ASEAN is and will always be a cornerstone of our free and active foreign policy. Indonesia is also embarking on a level of global engagement unparalleled to its modern era as we strive to play a more visible role on the worldwide stage. Thanks to the President's Prabowo, over 80 international engagements in just 12 months, both at home and abroad. And we have opened new market access and found new allies. Ladies and gentlemen, at Kadin, we also certainly want to contribute to this movement. We have set up the Kadin Global Engagement Office to act as our international delivery assurance unit for our priority international engagements, turning actions into outcomes. Kadin GEO, Global Engagement Office, brings together global, multilateral, and key bilateral platforms under one roof, enabling Indonesia enterprises to connect with the world by working with global knowledge partners across 6 thematic pillars, from climate and energy to health, digital economy, and beyond. Ladies and gentlemen, at the end, would like to thank you for all your support. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, as we close, let us continue to work hand in hand to build an Indo-Pacific that is open, peaceful, and prosperous for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Anindya Bakri. We would now like to invite the Chair of the ASEAN Business Advisory Council 2025, Tan Sri Nazir Razak, to deliver the opening remarks.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. His Excellency Anthony Albanese, Prime Minister of Australia, Bapak Airlangga Hartarto, Coordinating Minister for Economic Affairs, Indonesia, Mr. Nicholas Moore, Special Envoy to Southeast Asia, my friend Bapak Anin Bakri, Chair of ASEAN BAC, Indonesia and Kadin, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, a very warm welcome to Kuala Lumpur. It is indeed an honor for us, ASEAN BAC, to be teaming up with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs Indonesia as well as Kadin to organize this gathering this morning. This forum, AIPF, was first conceived in Indonesia 3 years ago. This is its third gathering, and let me congratulate both Kadin and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs Indonesia on the foresight of what may be happening in the world in the future. We have seen the dramatic events of this year, and in response to that, we see countries, we see regions looking elsewhere for stronger relationships. And this forum was really set up ahead of its time. Its time is now, and I'm so pleased to see so many in this room gathering. Now, I've just come off the back of 2 days of the ASEAN Business and Investment Summit, It was our 23rd edition of this annual event. And I said that, look, this cannot just be yet another summit. It has to be a summit where we come up with substantive recommendations, substantive ideas of how we reposition ourselves in the emerging new world order. I agree with the old Gramsci statement that the new order is dying, and the old order is dying, and the new refuses to be born. And it is imperative then that the actors, the states, the businesses, the regional organizations get it right. And Pak Anin has brilliantly given the big overview in terms of what Indonesia is doing and what ASEAN is doing. I would just like to zero in on one concrete proposal, if I may, Prime Minister, which is the whole notion of an ASEAN business entity. This is an idea that was first born also in 2023 under Indonesia's chairmanship. Malaysia has taken it on as the project lead. And in 2025, we have put it front and center of our agenda. The Malaysian government has now announced this idea of an ABE in its 2026 budget. Prime Minister Anwar announced it in his budget. Now, this idea can actually also be extended to the Indo-Pacific platform. Now, Nicholas will be very familiar with this whole concept, which is this, that we cannot politically have free movement of people, free movement of operations for companies for everyone. It's not going to be possible politically. But we can do it at a company level. So, for instance, if you imagine under an ABE in ASEAN, if you're recognized as an ABE, you can have free movement of people. You can outsource operations, right? But of course, if you no longer work for the company, then you can't, right? Your visa gets withdrawn. That would give real substance to the idea that we really are one economy. A lot of foreign investors come to Malaysia or ASEAN and they say, you told me you were a market of 700 million people, but when I come here, you're so fragmented. Yeah, it's so difficult for me to move things around, goods as well as people. And I thought about it and I said, look, why can't we actually have this at least at the company levels? So Malaysia has gone ahead with this whole concept of an ABE. And I had the great fortune yesterday of discussing this whole concept together with the MD of the IMF. And she thought that the idea actually is relevant across the world, at regional platforms across the world. So she has agreed that IMF would do a further study on the whole concept of an ABE. But I think, we don't need to wait for that study. The idea is very simple. And we really hope that the AIPF can consider that the A in ASEAN business entity actually means Asean-Indo-Pacific business entity. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think, if we can do one thing at a conference of this nature, it will be great. And let me just put that on the table. And let me end by again thanking Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Foreign Affairs Indonesia, as well as Kadin for the partnership. Thank you, Prime Minister and Bapak Airlangga for attending. And again, everyone, welcome and thank you for coming. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Tan Sri Nazir Razak. We are deeply honored and greatly privileged to now invite to the stage the Prime Minister of Australia, the Honourable Anthony Albanese, to deliver his remarks.
Salam alaikum. It is a great honour to join with you here this morning with my friend, the Indonesian Coordinating Minister for Economic Affairs, Airlangga Hartarto. I would also like to acknowledge the Chair, Anin, from the ASEAN Business Advisory Council for Indonesia, the Chair of the ASEAN Business and Advisory Council of Malaysia, Tun Sri Nazir Razak, my friend Nicholas Moore, our Special Envoy for Southeast Asia from Australia, and also there's another prominent Australian here, at least one amongst many, which is John Denton, who's gone on to be the head of the International Chamber of Commerce. In the best traditions of ASEAN, we gather here to seek ways of deepening our cooperation to our mutual benefit, recognising that the best way to enhance the security and resilience of our economies is not to turn inwards, it is to look outwards. To deepen and diversify our trade ties and economic cooperation, and to strengthen the bonds between our citizens. That requires more of us than signing an agreement or issuing a declaration. Instead, this is progress that we measure in acts of practical partnership. New businesses opening, new energy and infrastructure projects commencing, new investments in manufacturing and new friendships being forged through education or through cultural exchanges. That is how we can drive a step change in our region's economic integration and indeed our economic resilience. As a pro-trading nation and an outward-looking economy engaged with the opportunities of our region, Australia is ready to play our part in shaping this change. This year marks the 70th anniversary of Australia's diplomatic relationship with Malaysia. Those decades have seen extraordinary change across this nation and the region that we share. This has helped to drive a profound change in the way that Australia thinks about our place in this region. For much of our modern history, Australians imagined ourselves subject to the tyranny of distance, because the markets and economies that we associated with our prosperity and our growth, the United Kingdom, Europe and the United States, were all on the other side of the world. Through the 1970s and into the 1980s, this attitude began to change. We came to recognise the opportunity of proximity, the growth and transformation, the partnerships and potential right here in Southeast Asia. And the government that I lead is very proud to be advancing towards the next step, to move beyond a mindset which says we're on the doorstep of Southeast Asia and your extraordinary economic transformation, to an approach that gets us in on the ground floor. Not hovering on the threshold waiting for an invitation, not just neighbours and observers, but participants, engaged, partners, invested and embedded in the culture and enterprise and aspirations of our region's growth and success. When this forum talks about regional integration, that's the level that I want Australia to reach. That ambition is why one of the first things that we did upon coming to government in 2022 was to commission Mr. Moore as our Special Envoy for Southeast Asia. The qualities that he brought to the role as a very successful businessman in Australia who presided over the expansion of Macquarie into the region and right throughout the world was to bring a practical mindset of delivery as well. At this same event in Jakarta just 2 years ago, I launched the landmark report, Invested, Australia's Southeast Asia Economic Strategy to 2040. This signified a fundamental change in our approach, because we weren't asking for yet another survey about the region's potential. We didn't need to be persuaded of the merits of investing and trading and engaging in Malaysia or in the growing economies of Southeast Asia. And we weren't asking anyone to make the case for Australia's place in this region. Our fundamental question was not if or where, or indeed why, it was how. A significant change in Australia's approach, and one that has been driven by my cabinet and driven as well, taken up the opportunity by our private sector. How do we move beyond admiring potential to actually delivering the practical? How do we drive a shift in attitude through action? And how do we measure this so we can hold ourselves accountable and build on what's working? It's the approach that all of the business people in this room take in order to make your businesses more successful, larger, and more thriving as well. I take the same approach to the purpose of the government that I'm proud to lead. And that's where a really important element of our approach was understanding those tens of thousands of touch points between Australia and the economies of Southeast Asia. Connections which go beyond formal economic partnerships and trade agreements. Relationships created and nourished by businesses, institutions, and individuals. Business leaders and entrepreneurs who had the foresight to seek new markets here decades ago. Success stories like Cochlear, a life-changing Australian breakthrough in hearing technology that now has its third largest manufacturing precinct right here in KL. Or Lend-Lease, building a vibrant new part of this city with their development of the exchange. Or institutions like Monash University, the first international university to establish a campus here in Malaysia. And above all, people, diaspora communities, international students, travellers who fell in love with Southeast Asia and stayed here, or kept coming back as I have. Our objective was not to replace or crowd out their initiatives, it was to learn from their successes and to use their knowledge to build a cohesive strategic framework that would encourage others to follow in their footsteps. 2 years after we launched our strategy in Jakarta, we are seeing the results. Last year, Australia's two-way trade with Southeast Asia reached a record high. Two-way trade has grown by nearly $6 billion, while Australian investment in the region has increased by around $2 billion. And that hasn't happened by wishing and hoping. It's been shaped by the expertise and insights of our 10 business champions, including our business champion for Malaysia, Tony Lombardo, the CEO of Lend-Lease. It's been driven by our deal teams identifying potential projects across the region. This combination means that Australia is making new investment in farming in Laos, energy in Thailand, infrastructure in Vietnam, and through toll, transport and logistics across Southeast Asia. From our government's point of view, this is just the beginning. There is a $20 billion pipeline of projects where we see value for Australian capital and financing. What's more, we're backing ideas and innovation too. The landing pads that we've established in Jakarta, Ho Chi Minh City and Singapore have supported more than 160 Australian tech companies to scale up their presence in the region. And true to the ethos of ASEAN and the spirit of mutual benefit, we have worked to make it easier for the economies of Southeast Asia to invest in Australia. We've streamlined business visas and improved access and flexibility for frequent business travellers. And we're reforming our foreign investment regime, creating a single front door so it's easier for major investors to meet regulatory requirements and navigate government processes so that capital flows into good job-creating projects sooner. Our $2 billion Southeast Asia Investment Financing Facility is providing financing solutions to support investments in the region. Today I'm very pleased to announce we're delivering on our commitments to the region. We will invest $175 million into IFM Investors Asia-Pacific Debt Fund, a leading global investment manager owned by Australia's industry superannuation funds. This is a cornerstone transaction which will boost IFM's expansion here into Southeast Asia. Our investment will open the door to Southeast Asian markets for 15 Australian super funds, paving the way for these funds to deepen their engagement and investments across the region. We'll also invest US $50 million to establish a new platform by leading Australian public-private partnership infrastructure company Plenary. Plenary is an Australian infrastructure champion With this new platform, we're supporting the direct export of Australian expertise and know-how to deliver nation-building projects in Southeast Asia through public-private partnerships. This platform is expected to support much-needed infrastructure projects in Indonesia, the Philippines and elsewhere. Together, these investments represent a major step forward in my government's delivery of our Southeast Asia economic strategy to boost Australian exports and investments in the region, back the growth of Australian companies and support the region's infrastructure needs. It is important in forums such as this to celebrate and promote the progress that we have made together. It matters that we recognise the hard work and aspiration of the businesses and workers who have driven these endeavours. It is important that we showcase what is possible in even a short period when we engage with optimism and purpose. And it's vital that we build momentum for the future. As our friend Tun Sri Nazir Razak was saying, these have been difficult times. But what we can provide in this room through ASEAN is certainty going forward, confidence going forward. Because the best argument for ASEAN, the best argument for engagement and integration across our region, the best case that we can make for free and fair trade is not a theoretical one. It's not an appeal just to economic purity. It is jobs and wages, opportunities and choice, energy and infrastructure that changes lives and changes communities. That is how we demonstrate the continued value of our cooperation. And increased economic engagement has another bonus as well, because with it comes increased understanding. And through increased understanding and relationships comes better peace and security for the region as well. It's not either or, it's a case of one supplementing and encouraging the other, and both things going forward. That is how we deliver real benefits for the people that we serve, and that is why Australia is very proud to be invested in Southeast Asia, and I'm very proud now to have spoken at every one of the forums that we have held here, and I look forward to coming back and back again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, the Honourable Anthony Albanese, Prime Minister of Australia. And now it is with great honour that we invite His Excellency Erlangga Hartarto, Coordinating Minister for Economic Affairs of the Republic of Indonesia, on behalf of the President of the Republic of Indonesia, His Excellency Prabowo Subianto, to deliver his special remarks.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning. The Honourable Anthony Albanese, Prime Minister of Australia. His Excellency Pak Sidarto, Director General ASEAN of the Republic Indonesia. His Excellency Nicholas Moore, Special Envoy of Australia for Southeast Asia. Bapak Anindya Bakri, Chairman of Kadin, Bapak Tan Sri Nazir Razak, Chair of the ASEAN Business Advisory Council, John Denton, Secretary General of ICC. On behalf of Bapak Presiden Prabowo, Bapak Presiden is honored to join fellow leaders and business representatives at the Asean-Indo-Pacific 2025 this morning. Bapak Presiden commend Kadin in collaboration with ASEAN BAC Malaysia for hosting this important gathering. The Indo-Pacific is the engine of global growth. It is home to 60% of the world population and generate 60% of the global GDP and drives 2/3 of global economic growth and account for half of global trade and maritime transport. This is a region of immense opportunities and innovations. By 2030, it will be the home for 2/3 of the global middle class. During the greater consumption and growth with more advanced digital and green economies. But to truly harness this momentum, our growth must be inclusive. No nation and no one should be left behind. This means ensuring the equal opportunities for all to grow. It means giving every child access to high quality of education so that the next generation is fully equipped to thrive in an increasingly competitive and connected Indo-Pacific. On our part, Indonesia has been investing in its people. We launched the National Free Nutritious Meal Program. We are also building Merah Putih schools and people schools across the countries. Indonesia also providing rural areas with greater access to economic opportunities through electrification in more than 5,700 villages nationwide, and establishing 80,000 red and white village cooperative and supporting them with capital. Building cold storage facilities for farmers and fishermen, and increasing product quality and competitive advantage resulting in higher incomes. Ladies and gentlemen, at the same time, we face an increasingly complex set of regional and global challenges, from rising geopolitical tension and disruption to supply chain to climate pressure. These challenges cannot be met in isolation. They demand a stronger collaboration. To that end, we must continue to uphold an open, fair, inclusive, and rule-based economic order, one that ensures the developing countries have equal access to market and opportunities. We must also intensify our collaborations and collective efforts to strengthen regional integration by leveraging the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, or RCEP, as a platform for resilience and rules-based trade. RCEP has to be open for other countries to join the RCEP. At the same time, we need to accelerate our transition towards a sustainable and green energy through the ASEAN Common Carbon Framework and the ASEAN Power Grid. Finally, we must strengthen collaboration among business communities through the Asean-Indo-Pacific Business Network. Only then will growth in the Indo-Pacific to be shared and sustainable. Ladies and gentlemen, peace and prosperity can only achieve when governments and business work in concert. Together, we can drive strategic impact across Indo-Pacific. The private sectors play a crucial role in driving growth, innovation, and social progress. Yet, we must always remember that business is not only about generating profit. It is also about creating opportunities and improving lives. Ladies and gentlemen, through this forum, we are committed to collaborating to transform challenges into opportunities in the Indo-Pacific, ensuring growth benefit all of our peoples. Then I invite you to become the true collaborators for peace and prosperity. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, His Excellency Erlangga Hartarto. His Excellency, we welcome you to please remain on stage for an official photograph. We welcome to the stage His Excellency Nicholas Moore, Mr. Andindya Bakri, and Tan Sri Nazir Razak to please join His Excellency Erlangga Hartarto on stage for an official photograph. Please allow us to proceed with the countdown in 3, 2, and 1. Thank you very much, Your Excellencies and distinguished leaders. We now invite you to please proceed to your seats. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, please do remain seated, as we will now continue to the first panel discussion of the ASEAN-Indo-Pacific Forum 2025. We would also like to say our heartfelt thank yous to His Excellency Erlanger Hartarto for joining us here today and for gracing us with his presence, as well as for sharing his words with all of us. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we shall now proceed with the panel discussion. The ASEAN-Indo-Pacific Forum stands as a vital platform for cooperation, where governments, businesses, and partners from across ASEAN and the wider Indo-Pacific come together to turn shared aspirations into concrete collaboration. Through this forum, ASEAN and its partners reaffirm their shared commitment to strengthening connectivity, expanding trade, and building a future that is resilient for generations to come. In this spirit, our first panel will explore how deeper regional economic integration between ASEAN and its dialogue partners and the Pacific can advance strategic cooperation and strengthen economic resilience across the region. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, shortly we will be inviting our moderator and our panelists to the stage. We would now like to invite our moderator to the stage, Mr. Bernardino Vega, member of ASEAN BAC Indonesia and Vice Chairman for Foreign Affairs at Kadin, Indonesia, to moderate our first panel discussion. A big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, please. Mr. Vega is the President Director of PT Pembiayaan Digital Indonesia under Kami, one of Indonesia's leading peer-to-peer lending platforms serving over 15 million users nationwide. He also serves as alternate chairman for Indonesia in the ASEAN Business Advisory Council and has led key leadership roles advancing Indonesia's regional cooperation and economic engagement within ASEAN. Mr. Vega, the floor is yours.
Got it. Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. It is really early in the morning. It's 9 o'clock. But first of all, let me just welcome all of you in this ASEAN-Indo-Pacific Forum. As His Excellency Prime Minister Albanese has pointed out, the importance of this forum as well, and it reiterated again by Minister Airlangga Hartarto how key it is that the ASEAN-Indo-Pacific Forum remains relevant, because in the ever-volatile world where trade and investment dynamics change almost on a daily basis, ASEAN remains what we call a beacon of hope, a region of growth. In 2024, ASEAN as a whole posted a growth rate average 4.6%. Its trade has increased with the U.S. and China by 10%, and also investment has also increased by 10%. The Indo-Pacific region itself holds about 60% of the world population, and as Minister Hartarto mentioned earlier, also 60% of the world's GDP. So indeed, this region has become quite significant. Today we have be speaking with very distinguished regional thought leaders as well as pathfinders, and I'm really honored to have them speaking here this morning. And first of all, thank them for being here. The first gentleman is a friend of mine, actually. He is the Secretary General of the International Chamber of Commerce, appointed by the United Nations, His Excellency, or Mr. John Denton. Could I ask Mr. John Denton to come up, please? And thank you. Good morning. Yes, this here. Mr. Denton, let me just ask you, and we'd be grateful if you could introduce yourself a little bit, provide a brief overview of ICC's role, and I know you've been very active this last few years, going around the world and facilitating international trade, investment, as well as economic cooperation across the region. Where is he sitting? Oh, there, okay.
I'm sitting under.
Why is he far away from me? Okay, got it.
My wife told me this morning I looked like I was 80 years old, so I hope the portrait's more reflective. But anyway, thank you very much for having me, and thanks very much for everyone for making an effort to be here. I don't know if that's me getting that wrong. I can't underestimate the importance of the AIPF, and like Prime Minister Albanese, I've been privileged to participate in all of them. I'm also very privileged to serve on the advisory board of ANIN's Global Engagement Group as well, and I really do congratulate Cardin for all its attempts. I should also just shout out, because I'm honoured to serve on the board of IFM Global Investors, and it was very good to hear Prime Minister Albanese make specific point about the investment that the Australian government will make in that debt fund, because it is picking up on Nicholas's extraordinary work, evidence of the engagement, not just in words but in practice, but also with dollars into integration and engagement with the region. Just a quick couple of things about the International Chamber of Commerce. First of all, we're an institution. We've been around for 100 years, and I can assure you I am not appointed by the United Nations. I'm actually appointed by business. We work with the United Nations, but we are an institution, and our purpose is to enable business worldwide. We're now in 170 countries. I have been honoured to lead the expansion of the ICC. 70% of the ICC is now in the Global South, which makes us the most inclusive business voice in the world. We also enable $17.5 trillion worth of economic activity every year through the various organs that we control. For example, the whole trade finance market relies upon the rules and the codes developed by the ICC. So without it, we would not have a functioning trade finance market. So we do that. Our interest, and in particular in ASEAN at the moment, is really relying on its extraordinary convening power. I think you can see that in the quality of the leaders that are participating, in the quality of the business leaders. We are, as I said, in all these countries, and the thing that comes back to us from the business communities globally is what they're battling against at the moment is actually uncertainty. Yeah, sure, they don't like tariffs, but it's the uncertainty that's actually causing real challenges in terms of economic activity. Now, one of the things we do is we can, because of our size, our heft, our institutional quality, is we can bring a level of certainty where there is uncertainty and order where there is disorder. So what we've been doing this week in Singapore, actually with Watanabe-san and others, we've been convening a group of global business leaders based and centered around ASEAN, the whole purpose of which is to pull together a compact to increase economic activity. So that's what we're up to, and that's why I'm very glad to be here.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much for introducing yourself. Let me just call the rest of the speakers. Dr. Tetsuya Watanabe from AREA, President of the Economic Research Institute of ASEAN, for ASEAN and East Asia. Dr. Watanabe, as well as the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Southeast Asia and ASEAN Affairs, Bureau of East Asian and Pacific Affairs from the U.S. State Department, Mr. Hunt Vandertal. Good morning, Mr. Vandertal. Let's see.
All right, thank you. A hot seat.
And lastly, of course, His Excellency, Mr. Nicholas Moore, the Special Envoy for Southeast Asia from Australia. Thank you, Excellency.
Excellency.
So let me just start this preface with it's an honor to all you very distinguished leaders and pathfinders, as I say, of the region. Let me start with you, Deputy Assistant Secretary, and you've been around the area for quite a while. As an ASEAN dialogue partner, of course, how can you, in your view, United States plays a very important role in the region, and what's your sense in how you see economic integration can be increased and collaboration can be integrated within the context of from where you're sitting?
Absolutely. So I think yesterday, President Trump and Prime Minister Anwar mutually dancing on the tarmac, I think, was a good starting point for U.S.-ASEAN cooperation. But I think the President's visit here really showed that kind of two main things. One, the United States is committed to ASEAN. We are a great dialogue partner. We see a future in ASEAN. We respect ASEAN centrality. And so our cooperation with this important body is here to stay. And so obviously the President's first trip to the region was here to ASEAN. Second as well, and I know, I think President Trump and President Prabowo have had positive interactions, obviously President Trump and Prime Minister Anwar, but our relationship with Malaysia, our relationship with the region bilaterally as well is on the upswing. And so I think that you'll see, the President's here, he'll go to Japan and Korea as well, but what's the focus of the trip? Right. So what are things that came out of particularly the Malaysia portion? It was, we had trade deals. We had a trade deal that we were able to sign with Malaysia, trade deal with Cambodia. We were able to get framework agreements with Thailand, with Vietnam on kind of looking forward on trade. I think MOUs with Thailand, MOUs with Malaysia. And so there's so many areas, as was noted, so many areas. This area is rich in economic activity, rich in, FDI investment, obviously, I think over 6,000 U.S. businesses that are here in the region. And so, Southeast Asia and the United States is just rife for opportunity, an opportunity that's mutually beneficial, right? So our companies want to be here. Our companies want to employ here. We have so many American companies, and I see friends out here in the crowd as well. Good morning, Penny. Good morning, Anna. That are here, right, and representing U.S. businesses, U.S. values, but are here in the region. And I think our opportunity going forward is strong and bright.
Thank you, Deputy Assistant Secretary. And certainly it's very significant to see President Trump here today in Kuala Lumpur attending the ASEAN summit. Let me go next to Dr. Watanabe. We're very familiar with AREA, but AREA seems to, you play almost like as a dialogue partner, like a balancing act. And how do you see the deepening of intra-ASEAN integration from your viewpoint, and as well as external cooperation in several areas of initiatives that you have been undertaking, ASEC and several other initiatives. Tell me your perspective.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. AREA is a policy think tank located in Jakarta.
Yeah.
working for and with ASEAN and their partners. And to answer your question, it's, ASEAN's resilience depends on the two things at the same time. Of course, one is deeper integration inside the region, and second is stronger partnership with external partners.
Yeah.
And on the deeper integration within the region, it's of course inter-ASEAN trade. Everyone says that figure is around 21 to 22% total ASEAN trade. But this is ahead of any single external partners. And so this tells us two things. One is ASEAN is already important market for ASEAN. And the second one is at the same time, there's still huge untapped space. So on the ASEAN integration itself is sorry.
Yeah, it's falling off.
Maybe many things can be done. Abolishing non-tariff measures and the seamless movement, but the MSME participation in the supply chain. And Tansri Nazir mentioned earlier that maybe pathfinder approach for these kind of things, free movement of goods and the people like ABE idea is a good one. That's inside the inter-ASEAN. But on the other hand, external partnership, ASEAN cannot and should not be a closed block. ASEAN production network deeply integrated in the global network value chain. But heavy dependence on single market or supply source can create vulnerability. So strengthen ties with diversified partners like US and Japan, Australia, and the EU are very essential to ensure balance and resilience and fair competition. And ASEAN's cooperation, I'll finish soon, so sorry. ASEAN's cooperation with external partners should be built on the complementarity.
Okay.
And ASEAN has its young population and strong manufacturing base, while dialogue partners like US and Japan or Australia maybe excels in, has expertise in AI, future technology, quantum technology, and semiconductors. Therefore, cooperation built on innovation are way forward for strengthen ties between ASEAN and its external partners, US, Japan, Australia, and others.
Yeah.
And the energy transition is one of the critical area. LPG and carbon market, and maybe energy security is an essential agenda for the ASEAN. So maybe innovative technology, energy technology should be deployed on various fronts. And also critical mineral supply chain is essential for the energy transition, EV, and others. And so that's a sort of policy areas for governments and industries can collaborate. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Watanabe-san, and really appreciate area's role in enhancing collaboration, not only ASEAN, but also in the Indo-Pacific region in the context of ASEAN. Focusing on some of the key areas like critical minerals, and always the 800-pound gorilla in the room, which is NTBs, NTMs. Let me go on, and that's a segue to John Denton. John, you've been traveling around the world, basically. What's unique in the ASEAN Indo-Pacific region? That's my first question. The second is actually, what can the private sector do more? What's your sense and from your view, what's unique with us, and what is it that we can actually do more?
Well, great questions. I mean, as I said in my opening remarks, I mean, the constant, and it's not unique to ASEAN economies and ASEAN business, but you know, we're everywhere, and we recently surveyed all the chambers which represent these multiple millions, and the number one issue is actually uncertainty. It's uncertainty because people are not sure whether they should invest, whether they should sign that contract, whether they should hire that person, whether they'll be able to get finance. Economic activity is continuing, but it's subdued in terms of, even in ASEAN, though Anin quoted some very attractive numbers. But the reality is this uncertainty is weighing at the moment. So that's why flipping that is really our role here, which is how do we bring some certainty back into it. The reason we actually chose ASEAN to actually launch this global compact to encourage new ways of thinking about the revitalization of trade is because ASEAN has an interest in this. Because we know the positive numbers, but a truly challenging number is the erosion of a system which has enabled the growth of ASEAN, which is really the rules-based trading system, could lead, and I think Area has this number as well, to up to 12% drop in GDP. So there's an existential issue. It's why people like Mari Pengetsu have been leading this geo-economic group. It's why there's the leaders' meetings. It's why people have come together to actually reaffirm the need for ASEAN and the RCEP to become more integrated, more valuable. And it's why we see the leadership that can come out of this region as helping us on a global basis. So we're taking the principles that we're establishing, and frankly, it's not about the WTO. It's actually about increasing economic activity to spur opportunity and also economic development. We just saw, I think Anin mentioned, Timor-Leste has been included in ASEAN, which is fantastic. But also that is a developing and emerging economy of some challenge. And we need to ensure that the economic opportunity, which actually be led by the private sector, will actually enable that to happen. So how do we increase economic activity? So we're actually launching then a whole bucket of activities which we can use right now. So we have developed tools that can enable businesses to actually get market access across the borders. It's called One Click. It's in every language. We're actually looking at another inhibitor, like the reluctance of businesses to enter into commercial arrangements because of concerns about lack of dispute resolution. We're actually developing an AI-driven global platform at the moment to allow access to that. And we'll be launching that, by the way, in ASEAN, in Philippines, in the first quarter of the ASEAN-Philippines chairmanship, because it's that important to these economies. And we're also looking at how we liberate access to trade finance. So this is not about a boring, tedious, and stuck WTO debate. This is actually about activities that we can launch now. We can only fix trade finance, as I was saying to Hunt before, if we actually work together with the US and others through the G20 process to liberate macroprudential regulatory frameworks to get some accurate weighting. Because at the moment, trade finance in ASEAN is weighted at the same high level as complex derivatives. It's just crazy. So we've got to work on that together, and we hope that will form part of the agenda which comes out of ASEAN, which we'll take to Aipf, which I'll then take to the G20 in South Africa, and hopefully we picked up as part of the US G20 year next year. So there's lots for us to do, but it actually all starts for us in ASEAN.
Sure, very good. I think that helps in trying to address the disparity gap between economies in ASEAN and the Asia-Pacific, where it's really huge. Let me just move on to Nicholas, because Australia has played a very central role in the last few years, and the pivot, or the white paper, as you presented several years ago, was very instrumental. Tell me about some of those initiatives that you have made, and some of the discussions that have been going on the last year, actually, and I know that you're very active around the region, but share some of those things.
Certainly. You've heard a lot from our Prime Minister earlier today, and I think it's particularly significant the Prime Minister was here. This is very much central to his agenda in terms of Australia, that Australia will be more engaged in every possible way with the region. The neighbourhood matters. We all know that. The whole idea of ASEAN is based on geography. It matters. Australia is a key neighbour to the ASEAN region. It has been a part of government policy in Australia since the creation of ASEAN, of course. We were the first partner to ASEAN, as the Prime Minister mentioned. But what the Prime Minister has focused on is moving it, well, broadening it, I should say, from government to government and addressing the issues that John was talking about in terms of potential blockages. There's been very good work has been done over the years, government to government, from a security viewpoint, from removing blockages to taking that next step for greater business engagement. And so picking up a few of the points that John made, part of that is finance. So Export Finance Australia, traditionally one would think of enhancing exports to the region. Actually, it's been repurposed to assist investments in the region from Australia. So you heard the Prime Minister mention a $2 billion facility. We've also mentioned 3 specific investments in the region that will crowd in greater investment from the private sector. You also heard him mention this idea of deal teams, of having people on the ground in all the different capitals of the region with the skills to be able to develop projects, business opportunities for Australian companies who are looking at moving into the region. And as the Prime Minister mentioned, there's a pipeline of $20 billion worth of business activities that are being developed at the moment. As well as that, in terms of removing blockages, we've said the architecture is very good. We entered into an upgraded Australian-New Zealand-ASEAN free trade agreement in March, further reducing those barriers. As the Prime Minister said, we've also made it easier for ASEAN business leaders to travel to Australia with the new visas, with the single door for investments to take place. And the other way, we have with us today a delegation from Australia. This is the 19th business delegation that has visited the region since the report was launched, with over 500 business leaders coming to the region since the report was launched. So that's a very practical way that, both sides, from ASEAN into Australia, we've seen quite a lot of investment, but Australia into ASEAN, as the Prime Minister mentioned, an additional $2 billion in the last 12 months, additional trade, an extra $6 billion flowing. So I think we're very fortunate from a top-down viewpoint within Australia. The Prime Minister is very much bought in, he's very much leading it, but there is a very good response coming through. And as well as that, I should acknowledge Tony Lombardo, who's in the room, the Chief Executive of Lend-Lease. One of the initiatives the Prime Minister put in place was having 10 leading Australian business leaders putting their hand up for each of the different countries in the region. Tony heads up Lend-Lease, very substantial operation here in Malaysia. He's here supporting the business delegation today, but we have someone of a similar level, my former colleague, for example, Shamara Wickramayaka, is putting her hands up for the Philippines. The former head of the BCA is putting her hands up for Indonesia, Jennifer Westacott. So the Cardian equivalent in Australia is now the business champion between Australia and Indonesia. So a lot of concrete, practical steps that are being put in place to really drive that two-way trade and investment, and really focusing on two-way. This is not about Australian exports coming to the region. It's much as exports from the region coming to Australia, because I think, we're talking about disruption, obviously, in the last 12 months, but it's been a much longer story. Obviously, coming out of COVID, we saw a lot of disruption. Everyone is looking to diversification. Coming back to John's point about risk mitigation, number one in risk mitigation is diversification. Building strong relationships with the region. I think everybody in the world is seeing the benefits of that.
Yeah, thank you. Certainly it's next level in your engagement with the special envoys for specific countries. It's very much appreciated. Indonesia alone, we've had, I think, 5 trade delegations or investment delegations back and forth.
Absolutely. Well, it's 40% of ASEAN, so it really does matter. So you would expect to see that.
But let me pivot a bit to Deputy Assistant Secretary.
Call me Hunt.
Yeah.
It's much shorter.
I'm looking at your title, man. It's a mouthful. But anyway, let me ask you. Statistically, you know, we have U.S. Trade has increased 10% in ASEAN. Also, investments have increased. The American is the number one investor in ASEAN, actually, in 2023 and 2024. We've also had 80% of our economy is digitized and digital penetration in the ASEAN. Yet we tend to be in the peripherals of global consciousness, so to speak, right? What can you think, how can we engage more with the U.S.? I mean, when we look in the media, it's always Europe, even at some parts, Middle East. But Southeast Asia, a bastion of growth, actually, and is you know, tend to be only in the peripherals of discourse and conversation. You know, in your view, how can we make it more in the global limelight?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So I think supply chain resilience is something, I was on a panel, I think yesterday on this issue, but I think that's where Southeast Asia's competitive advantage really comes in. I think post-COVID, you know, during 2020, we all, at least from the United States perspective, really realized vulnerabilities in the supply chain. And so I understand that there's, you know, some companies choose a China plus one strategy or just a general, you know, framework for diversification. I think that's really where Southeast Asia comes in. I think, again, the workforce is here, the infrastructure is here, the companies are already here where we have existing long-standing economic relationships. And so I think the integration may be there. I think, you know, I think everyone here, you know, hold up your phone. I guarantee you there's a part in there, even if it's an iPhone or Samsung or others, right? It has parts that either were designed here or, you know, supply chain additive manufactured here, right? Or, you know, an input came from Southeast Asia. So I think that you're already there, right? You're starting to see this increase of supply chains going there. Americans every day have it, you know, in their hand, quite literally. But I think it really is, and that's kind of, again, the president coming here for us, just really, you know, reaffirming our commitment to ASEAN in the region is, you know, elevating that profile. Because I think and strengthening, I think the MOUs that we're signing, the trade deals that we're signing, you know, some of the more bilateral as well, I think all of those will elevate the consciousness of, you know, America, American business. You know, I see Tadocius and Brian McFeeters here, you know, USABC, they do a fantastic job here of, you know, our US companies that are here elevating the role and the benefit that Southeast Asia can offer to American companies. So I think that the trend is there. I know for us at the State Department right now, I won't step on our USTR colleagues, you know, turf there. From state, we're very excited. We think Southeast Asia, you know, is a growing, it's already here, but growing. And so the opportunities that we see, again, for this administration, we're very excited about.
Thank you. Thank you. That certainly is useful insight for us to take forward, and hopefully, as we grow, more and more people will be looking at ASEAN as more of a central global consciousness. But let me move on to Dr. Watanabe. Dr. Watanabe, what's next for you in your academic research in terms of ASEAN? I know that we once talked about, you know, ASEAN solutions for ASEAN issues. What do you think it would be the next in the horizon for the Asean-Indo-Pacific region?
I think, first of all, as we discussed, it's a supply chain issues. And area conducted a study on the semiconductors and auto. And but as I said, that it's, I mean, for both sectors or energy transition, critical mineral supply chain is essential. And abundant mineral in the Indonesia, nickel, Indonesia, Philippines, and the copper and rare earths in Vietnam, Laos, and others. So, and the Indonesia's downstream policy is a very, I mean, legitimate one to have a value-added portion in Indonesia. That's a very legitimate and appropriate desire for the Indonesian people. And and maybe investment in the midstream and downstream in this region. It's critical.
Okay.
And for doing that, maybe transparency issues and some of the standard issues are needed. And so for the local workforce, ESG compliance, transparency, and regulatory process are very needed. And this is not for just one country; it's regional issues, and not only for the region, but dialogue partner like US and Japan and Australia can collaborate and maybe tap into the potential for this region.
Okay. All right. So I hear value chain, and I hear also, value added and vertical integration. And let me ask John this, right? And this is a general, your general view. This region has had a lot of economic agreements, right? Free trade agreements. You have RCEP, and you have bilateral CEPAs within the region. But it seems to me that one of the biggest challenges of the region is usage of these agreements. What's your view? Is it that we're just not disseminating enough into the business community on the usage of these agreements, or are these agreements becoming more and more irrelevant as business models change and the dynamics in the business landscapes change, and these agreements become a bit more irrelevant? What's your view?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. Can I come to that in a second? I just want to go back to the question you asked Hunt. What's really interesting for me about the underlying kind of assumption of that question about how do we ensure the relevance of ASEAN is better known, is just the fact is 2/3 of the world's middle class will be based in ASEAN by 2030. Guys, this is not a kind of interesting to know market. This is a must know market. One of the challenges the market has is the way in which politics, particularly in the post-Second World War period, has actually not allowed the space, I think, for the vibrancy, the knowledge and the importance of ASEAN to actually be reflected in the way in which the world orders itself. But frankly, with the reordering, the shift in paradigm that the Prime Minister discussed about and my good friend Aliango Hatoto talked about as well, this is an opportunity for that visibility, because the old system is being reordered, and to be stuck in the old paradigm is actually, well, I think also, as the chair of ASEAN BARC said as well, the baby is not fully born yet, so let's make certain we're part of shaping how it's seen when it actually comes forward. So it's really important to bear all those things in mind. You ask a really specific question about the value, in a way, of a number of these arrangements that are entered into. I mean, the fact is the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership accounts for 30% of global trade. So it is the largest partnership agreement of its type in the world. And yet, I spent some time in Tokyo with Watanabe-san earlier this year. The other fact, just bear in mind, that it's actually only really used by businesses in Japan, China, and Korea, and then only businesses of a certain size. The way we look at it, so I was talking before about trying to encourage greater economic activity, not kind of being stuck in the headlights of these constant discussions about WTO negotiations, all this sort of stuff, is that there's actually an asset there. We have an asset, which is the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. By the way, in Africa, we have an asset called the African Continental Free Trade Area. In Latin America, we have an asset called Mercosur. So we have all these assets there, but they're not utilized effectively. Part of the challenge with ASEP was the way in which it was created. And I think this is where, moving forward, the deeper engagement of the private sector in creating frameworks that are supposed to enable activity by the private sector becomes critical. Because the way it works is the rules of origin, which is a critical part of it, is frankly incomprehensible to SMEs in Southeast Asia. It's unbelievably complex to work our way through because the people forming it did not engage and create, I think, the language. So what we're actually doing at the ICC is looking at all these assets and working out how we can simplify rules of origin, how we can actually now also create a reliable global certificate of origin for the 21st century. All these things that an institution like the ICC, which can create soft law, can actually do. So these are all elements. But fundamentally, as we move forward, and I think Hunt would agree here, one of the things that's been missing is there's been too much detachment by global governance people from the actual drivers of economic opportunity, which is the private sector. Friends, this is our opportunity to join that up. I mean, the development assistance-led model of economic opportunity in least developed countries is dead. It actually can only be replaced by the private sector-led model. That's what we need to do, working with governments and entities that understand that. So engaging much more with the private sector, and actually what we're trying to do is fix the information asymmetry that exists between an asset like RCEP and the end users, which is business.
Thank you, John. And that disconnect there between government and businesses and the usage of those trade agreements. But Nicholas, Australia has done more, right? You've restructured this. You've formed deal teams. In fact, deal teams through your embassies. Let me ask you, what is the main challenges that some of your colleagues are addressing in the ASEAN and also Asia-Pacific region as a whole?
Yeah, so the reason for the deal teams, and indeed a lot of the focus of raising awareness, is that Australian companies have been very globally active. So the economy in Australia was opened up 50 years ago. And because of that, our corporate sector has been very outward looking. A lot of activity directed towards the United States, probably number one in terms of corporate activity, then Europe, then North Asia. And in absolute terms, the individual countries in the regions were overlooked, frankly. This is, the reality. So to overcome that deficiency, the government is leaning in to provide the resources that companies don't have in terms of on-the-ground knowledge. Because as we know, in terms of doing business, you have to be there. The most important, I ran a business with operations all around the world. You have to be on the ground to do it. You have to have your people on the ground. Now, as a way of accelerating this, because it's happening anyway, this is a question of accelerating it, the government has provided through Austrade and through DFAT the facility for Australian companies to have arms and legs on the ground and knowledge on the ground they otherwise don't. So we know that the amount of investment in the area, the amount of activity is stepping up, but the ambition is for it to step up much higher. So the people who have been employed are lawyers, like John, bankers, accountants, people like that, and people who have actually been engaged. And Austrade obviously traditionally has been focused on Australian exports in the region, which have been very successful. But it's actually saying, okay, Australian companies doing business in the region, Australian institutions investing in the region. And so as the Prime Minister mentioned, they've identified $20 billion worth of opportunities, $20 billion, which are real. They've gone through the list, everyone's got a long list, and they've actually thinned them down. And as a way of actually catalysing and bringing in more activity on the ground. So real focus, and so far so good in terms of how those dedicated resources are being used to build knowledge, build relationships. The other issue that he mentioned was the landing pad. So we have a very active startup area, particularly in the digital economy in Australia. Those companies are by their very nature resource poor. So again, the government providing a landing pad across the region in Jakarta, in Ho Chi Minh, In Singapore, so 160 Australian companies have used those to set up operations, again supported by resources they otherwise can't have. So it's recognising that for some of our digital companies are very large, right? So they don't need any support and they have operations already. But for the smaller ones, that startup culture, the government's leading in to help them establish. So you've got the normal sort of Australian, sort of larger companies. You've got the medium to small companies which are benefiting from this deal team. So the larger companies are already here. And then you've got the digital companies, the smaller ones who are benefiting from these landing pads. So different sort of levels of support depending upon what we're looking at. But all of them are about how do we have investment, how do we carry on activity across the region.
Interesting, and you're also addressing the different business models that exist.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
Brick and mortar, and then the digital.
And bringing them, really, the really important thing is making them aware of the local market conditions. Because as we all know, when you do business internationally, you might do banking in Australia, but it mightn't work in the US. They might already have banks in the US already, so there mightn't be much benefit in doing that. Maybe you do something else when you go to the US. And the guys on the ground are the ones who can identify local partners to work with and local areas to identify. There's no point in bringing your product here. There's 6 people already doing it. Maybe you should go somewhere else.
Yeah.
So it's that way of providing that filter.
Thank you. I realize I have like 12 minutes left, and I'm in my brief. I'm supposed to give 10 minutes for Q&A. And I don't have a slate, so they don't provide me anything. So let me just go across the room and ask if you have any specific question or any jarring questions you want to ask any of our speakers, panelists. Please feel free. Just introduce yourself, who you are, where you're from, and what your question is, or even share some of your own insights. Anybody? Oh, there's this gentleman on the left. Anybody can give him a microphone or a...
Yeah, thank you very much, and congratulations for this very successful event. I'm Mr. Olivier Sigaud, acting ambassador for France. And I would like to share a question from a European perspective, because ASEAN is going to be the 4th economic trade zone in the world, and the 3 other big zones are the US, China, and EU. I would like to get back to your remark about the tension between ASEAN regional economic integration and the risk of global trade fragmentation. We've seen a lot of bilateral deals, trade deals, that have been concluded. EU is doing the same. I would like to congratulate Indonesia, who concluded FTA negotiation with the EU a few weeks ago. The EU is working toward the FTA with Malaysia, with Thailand, with Philippines. So we have a very diverse landscape. And so my question is very simple. How can we address this tension and to avoid this fragmentation for business, to have fair, free trade and also predictable trade? Predictability is also very important. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Very, very good question, actually. John, you want to take a stab at that?
Sure.
And maybe
sure.
One of you guys can add.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I'm sure others will have comments, and I know what Watanabe-san and I have discussed this. I mean, that's actually at the essence of what we're doing at the ICC, particularly by launching this global compact to actually ensure continued economic activity in ASEAN. Because as you say, the risk of fragmentation is real, because there's the risk of the erosion of the underlying system that's enabled the activity, in particular, the functioning of the supply chains. I mean, I used to chair finance and economics in the APEC Business Advisory Council and set up the Asia-Pacific Financial Forum, because for a start, what was really interesting was that ASEAN and APEC countries trade more with each other than they actually invested in each other. And one of the reasons for that was the softness of the capital market. So we needed to do something on that to actually bring that up to speed. But the other dimension was that the reason there'd been the exponential growth was more to do with the functioning of supply chains and the agreement on underlying standards, which was actually enabled through the creation of rules that supported that. So the risk of erosion of the underlying multilateral system is actually what gives rise to the risk of fragmentation, which is why it's really important for us, and this is what we're trying to pull together, this certainty, to create again what a revitalized system will look like, because the old system as we know it is actually shifting. So we need to be part of ensuring the new system captures the very things that will enable continued economic integration. What's really important there is also to acknowledge that the old system didn't cover the most important global economic driver in the 21st century, which is the digital economy. So we actually, we need to take this opportunity to work on that. The system governed by the WTO doesn't really cover trade finance. That's really important. It doesn't really cover a lot of the areas that are really important to business in the 21st century, which is why, yes, there's elements of it which are critical moving forward. The underlying principles that inform RCEP, they inform the African Continental Free Trade Area, which is this issue of non-preferential, non-discriminatory in dealings with each other. But that is not all it's about. In the end, those things are only useful so you actually know what the tariff rates are. That's what you need to work through. So there is actually a way through this, and that's where I think the ASEAN economies and the leadership of President Prabowo and I think Prime Minister Mahathir to actually pull all this together has actually been quite critical. ASEAN will actually be the catapult, I think, to enable us to have a revitalized system with the level of certainty required by business. It will not be as efficient as what we've just had. It may well be more complicated, but it will be able to function and provide the certainty needed to continue the economic integration of the region and make this region continually attractive.
Thanks, John. So yes, multilateralism still exists, just looks different, right? Anybody else who want to? Yes, Watanabe-san, please.
I think erosion of multilateralism is tier one, and I used to be a trade negotiator, so and we have to face the realities. And Tan Sri said in the opening that new system refused to be born, but we have to give birth. And that's not multilateralism. Maybe some regional setting like ASEAN collaboration, ASEAN Plus, and maybe CPTPP, RCEP maybe. And that's one. And maybe another approach is a plurilateral approach, focusing on some issues and sectors like energy cooperation and critical mineral and digital. And then we can have some set of collaboration on sectors for critical to business interests.
Focus on the key sectors. Anybody else? Yes. Professor Laude from Indonesia, I recognize him.
Thank you very much. I would like to share with you the relationship of regional economic integration in ASEAN and Pacific with the Atlantic business community, as well as the BRICS. How do you see the three groups playing the business in that area? Thank you very much.
Okay, is that any specific panelists you want to address?
Basically, for Denton, I guess they can answer the question.
And John, you're popular. You take a stab at it, and then if
thanks very much, and maybe Hunt will have some comments as well. But
yeah.
One of the curiosities of my life is that the ICC, we operate at the B7, we operate at the B20, G20. I co-chair finance and infrastructure there. We're intimately involved with APEC, and we've been working on the BRICS Plus area. We've been asked to actually help the BRICS Plus business community because what they're concerned to do is that the purpose of the BRICS Plus from an economic point of view is actually not to be an anti-American play. It's actually to create opportunities for market access based on market-based principles. And they obviously see the ICC as a functioning but important partner for that. So it's been a very interesting process to actually, and when Indonesia, of course, is now part of BRICS Plus, what Indonesia brings in, I think, with leading economies like UAE and frankly Brazil, they actually want to keep the focus in the BRICS Plus on economic opportunities. I'm sure there'll be a political dimension, but I have no interest in that. Mine's all about economic opportunity. So I do see the potential alignment between what can happen in BRICS Plus on market access, economic opportunities, what actually happens in the APEC region, what happens in ASEAN as well. It's all driving to increasing economic activity. However, there will always be, like all these things, the risk of political friction. And that's where you'll find mess. But the actual trend is towards opening up more market-based economic activity. That's what people want. And that's what the business communities want in the BRICS Plus area.
Hunt, you want to take?
No, just following on what John had said, I think that there is a political aspect to BRICS Plus, and we all in this room recognize that. But I think that that's where, from our USTR colleagues, Treasury colleagues, the point of many of these trade deals isn't just the tariff rate, but it's kind of getting up to what Nicholas and John were talking about earlier. It's all these non-tariff barriers that we were seeing earlier. So we had many businesses coming and saying, hey, it's not just I have a tariff, but it's these regulations. It's these, when I want to do business in this country, I have difficulty doing X, Y, Z. And so for our USTR, when we would go into these negotiations, it wasn't just, okay, here's what this, counter tariff is going to be. It was, these are regulations or these are practices that really make it difficult for our businesses to operate. And so from that point of view, it wasn't, the tariff side is one side of the ledger, but it really was, how can we ensure that U.S. companies are more able to operate in other developing countries and also meet, if you have American businesses that want to operate in ASEAN, in Southeast Asia, if you have medium that can't afford the regulatory burden that some larger companies can, it's really trying to get after, give them access. And so I generally think that from the American perspective, we feel, at a level playing field that we can compete globally and anywhere. And so I think a goal of many of these trade deals and going after tariff barriers is giving that level playing field and trying to present the best version of ourselves that say, hey, we're American, United States, we want to invest here. And so choosing us, and I know where ASEAN sits and many countries have told us, don't make us choose. We understand that, we understand where countries sit globally, but I think we want you to choose because it is good bilaterally for individual countries or good for ASEAN to work with the United States. I understand the larger, again, like John was saying, there's global politics, et cetera, we get that. But I truly do believe, countries want to choose us because they see that we are a good partner. They see the values that we bring to the table. They see the benefits of working with American companies. And so I'll leave the geopolitical stuff elsewhere, but I will say that for American companies coming, we'll back them any day of the week 100%. And we do think that they are a great choice for ASEAN and a great choice for ASEAN member countries.
Thank you, Hunt. Maybe, Nicholas, can you want to add a little bit? And also, I'd like to ask you for your conclusive remarks. What's your last statement before we adjourn the panel?
Well, I'd just like to thank Kadin for the opportunity to be here. Indonesia and ASEAN obviously very important today from a trading viewpoint for Australia, our second largest trading partner, but we're very ambitious in terms of seeing that trade grow, but particularly ambitious to see the investment grow. Two-way investment, but a lot of investment opportunity we see in the region for Australian companies. And so for everybody here, when you're thinking about who you can be partnering with in terms of growing your business, I'd certainly be saying Australian business is very much focused on the region and has a lot to offer.
Thank you. John, last statement.
Oh, fantastic to be with you. This is an incredibly important forum. This is an incredibly important, I think, moment for the region as well. And the fact that the business community, led by AIPF, led by the ASEAN BUC, is actually stepping up, I think creates the space for us to do some really interesting things together. And I welcome the continued cooperation with you guys.
Thank you, John. Watanabe-san?
I think ASEAN is a very visible flagship project to showcase in integration. And we very much would like to contribute as a knowledge partner.
Thank you. And
just thank AIPF for having us today. It's a great group of folks here today, wonderful companies represented. And again, I just want to reiterate the United States' commitment to ASEAN, commitment to ASEAN centrality. And so again, just coming off the heels of the president's visit, it's been a great day. I think everyone's tired, but I think it has been a fantastic visit. I know we have more to go tonight with EAS, but just grateful to be here today and kick off the day with you all.
thank you. And with that note, I thank you again, panelists, for being here. Big hand for all of them. Very insightful remarks and comments. And before you all adjourn, the screen says Pak Dino lihat sesudah ini foto. Okay, so we're going to have the photo session now.
We shall count down together for the group photograph. Gentlemen, may we please have you facing the cameras. Counting down in 3, 2, and 1. And a big thank you once again to Mr. Bernardino Vega and to all of our distinguished panelists for sharing your insightful contributions in today's discussion. Thank you. Now, ladies and gentlemen, before we proceed on with the next segment, as part of today's program, we will soon be witnessing the signing of a memorandum of understanding between two key institutions that play an important role in advancing regional economic cooperation: the Indonesian Chamber of Commerce and Industry and the Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia. The Indonesian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, or KADIN Indonesia, serves as the umbrella organization for Indonesia's business chambers and associations. KADIN Indonesia plays a central role in matters of trade, industry, and services, while championing the interests of the private sector and fostering collaboration across the national economy. As the only nationwide business organization mandated by law to represent private enterprise, KADIN Indonesia maintains a close partnership with the government and operates through a vast network of regional and district chambers, ensuring its reach across the archipelago. As an independent organization, KADIN Indonesia continues to be the voice of Indonesian businesses as well as a preferred partner for international companies seeking to engage and invest in Indonesia. Meanwhile, the Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia, or ERIA, is an international organization established in 2008 to serve as a leading policy research institute for ASEAN and its dialogue partners in East Asia. Headquartered in Jakarta, Indonesia, ERIA plays a pivotal role in providing analytical support, policy recommendations, and capacity-building initiatives to advance regional economic integration, sustainable development, and resilience across ASEAN and the broader East Asian region. Since its inception, ERIA has become a trusted think tank for shaping ASEAN's economic architecture, supporting evidence-based policymaking for a more integrated, competitive, and sustainable East Asia. And so on that note, ladies and gentlemen, today's Memorandum of Understanding between KADIN Indonesia and ERIA marks another important milestone in deepening collaboration between the private sector and the international organizations such as ERIA to strengthen policy research, capacity building, and knowledge sharing that will support Indonesia's competitiveness and sustainable economic integration across ASEAN. ERIA is proudly joining KADIN Indonesia as a knowledge partner. And so on that note, ladies and gentlemen, before we proceed to the signing of the Memorandum of Understanding, we would like to invite you to please take your seats. Here with us on stage we have Mr. Adinya Bakri, Chairman of the Indonesian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and Mr. Tetsuya Watanabe, President of the Economic Research Institute of ASEAN and East Asia. They are coming together now to sign the Memorandum of Understanding. Gentlemen, when you're ready, please proceed to sign the document. And let's hold the signed document to the cameras. Today's signing affirms a shared commitment to turn evidence into action for policymakers and business leaders across the region. Let's give them a big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, please. And with that, thank you very much, gentlemen. You may now step down stage. Ladies and gentlemen, we do have more in store for you today. Coming up next, we have another panel discussion. Across ASEAN, such partnerships are becoming the cornerstone of our collective progress, where institutions like AREA continue to guide evidence-based policymaking and foster regional connectivity, while business networks such as the Kuala Lumpur Business Club bring together industry leaders to transform ideas into actionable cooperation. We also see the same spirit of innovation reflected in the private sector through companies like Dana Indonesia, whose work in digital finance continues to expand inclusion and bridge economies through technology. These initiatives reflect one shared vision: that sustainable development in ASEAN and the Indo-Pacific can only be achieved when governments, research institutions, and businesses move forward together, building trust and across each sector. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, in a moment we will be having our next discussion, one that continues this conversation on collaboration and connectivity through ASEAN's regional frameworks for sustainable and cross-border growth. ASEAN continues to advance regional collaboration through projects that link economies, infrastructure, and governance systems, ensuring that development and integration proceed hand in hand. Today's second panel will explore key initiatives driving this cooperation: the ASEAN Common Carbon Framework, the ASEAN Power Grid, and cross-border payment connectivity, initiatives that collectively strengthen regional resilience and economic integration. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now like to invite our moderator to the stage. We invite Ms. Shinta Wijaya Kamdani, Coordinating Vice Chairwoman for Human Development, Culture and Sustainable Development at Kadin Indonesia, ABEC Indonesia, Council Member, Chief Executive Officer of Sintesa Group, to moderate this next panel discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, if you may, we invite you to please take your seats as we proceed to the panel discussion. If we may, once again, please do take your seats.
Ladies and gentlemen, can you please kindly sit down so we can start this panel? I'm sure afterwards you're on the way to many other things. So let me first introduce our distinguished panel today. We have from the Bursa Malaysia, Dato' Fadli Muhammad. Is he here? Please join us.
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, Dato'.
Hi.
And the second is Dato' Abdul Razib Dawood, the Executive Director of ASEAN Center of Energy. Please, Dato'. And lastly, our own Fins Iswara, CEO and co-founder of Dana Indonesia. Please join us. Please.
Hi, good to meet you.
So, gentlemen, I have the honor as the only female in this panel to moderate you. And these days, I always say, female ended up being just the moderator. This is not fair, right? Okay, so I wanted the topic today, as you see, is very, very interesting. We have a regional, we call it a regional cross-border sustainable development. And we will be focusing on the three area, which is the ASEAN Common Carbon Framework, the ASEAN Power Grid, and the cross-border payment connectivity. So each of these initiatives, I think ASEAN is something we have to applaud for. But the Common Carbon Framework aims really to harmonize the carbon markets and also standard, ensuring that the sustainability efforts are credible and interoperable across the borders. And of course, the ASEAN Power Grid seeks to physically link our nations through clean and renewable energy flows, turning energy transition into a shared opportunity rather than a national challenge. And the third is, of course, the cross-border payment connectivity, which enables really the financial backbone that allows this collaboration to function efficiently, supporting also green investment, trade, and innovation across the region. So together, I think this framework embody what ASEAN moved from coordination to integration, from vision to action, ensuring that sustainable development, not just a national goal, but a truly regional achievement. So, as moderator, my role today is really to guide your discussion. We want to really have insight. I mean, I'm sure all of you have shared in many different panels, but are there any insight, especially in this strong momentum of ASEAN Summit happening just this week? I think from each of your perspective, I'm sure you can share some highlight and what really we need to pay attention to. So I want to start by just asking each of you to give us a brief introduction on what you do. So please, Dato.
Thank you. Firstly, thank you very much to the organizers, Asean-Indo-Pacific Forum, for having me here. I'm kind of having two roles here, a dual role. I'm CEO of Bursa Malaysia, a strong proponent of the national carbon markets, and I'm also Deputy President of Kuala Lumpur Business Club, one of the partners for the events today. So thank you again for being here. Happy to share some of our thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Please.
Thank you. Again, first of all, I would like to thank ASEAN BAC and Kadin Indonesia for inviting ASEAN Center for Energy, or we are known as ACE, or the center. We are based in Jakarta. ACE was founded 26 years ago by the energy ministers of ASEAN. The purpose of ACE is really intergovernmental organization. We advise ASEAN Minister of Energy, the 10 ASEAN member state, on energy policy, energy cooperation. I will share with you what happened, not this week, but the week before last, on other summit for ASEAN energy ministers on energy cooperation, all those memorandum of understanding, all those agreements they have signed for roadmap on energy transition and energy cooperation and so on.
Good. So maybe we go later to a more deeper discussion, but I want to ask Dana to also, I will call you Dana, because Dana is an important brand for Indonesia.
Thank you.
So please, introduce Dana. Please.
Sure. The same, I would like to say thank you to the organizers, and then also, I'm also part of the Kadin as well with Bu Sinta, so I'm very honored to be here. So Dana is a fintech company based in Indonesia, and we are a digital wallet. That's really our vision, is to digitize the country and to increase the digital economy penetrations in Indonesia, which is a part of very important initiative, not only from the market society, but also by the administration of the President Prabowo. And Dana is one of the large fintech company. We already have 200 million users, and then we are empowering the fintech into the market, especially for the mass market beyond Tier 2 and Tier 3 and Tier 4 cities.
Great. So, gentlemen, let us start now with the discussion. I want to first ask Datuk Fadil.
Sure.
Muhammad. I know that Malaysia, of course, assumed has just completed the ASEAN chairmanship and really advances its national carbon market through the Bursa Carbon Exchange. I want to recognize you as, I think, the first entity to be given validation from SBTI. This is my understanding. The first Bursa, right? So congratulate to you.
Thank you.
And I know Indonesia wants to follow as well, and some others. But could you really share briefly on the challenges you feel, especially in ensuring this credit integrity? How is this happening, and what is really the regional effort to uphold this end-to-end market integrity?
Thank you, Buchinta. So I think maybe I'll start off by giving the genesis of Bursa Carbon Exchange, or what we call BCX. And a lot of it was conceptualized sometime in October 2021, before COP26, and it was decided that we have a voluntary carbon market to be set up. And it's a precursor to a setting up of a compliance mechanism. And quite clearly, it's to determine carbon pricing. It's to start the process of discovery for carbon pricing. Then in December 2022, we launched Bursa Carbon Exchange. And Bursa Carbon Exchange clearly trades carbon credits from two independent carbon standards, Verra and Gold standards. And this is the first Sharia compliant carbon exchange. And sometime last year, BCX pivoted to also trade environmental type products, including renewable energy certificates. So BCX plays clearly three roles. Number one, to promote market liquidity and market participantship. So essentially, we have 95 companies today registered with BCX. We recognize today that the liquidity remains challenging for the voluntary carbon market primarily, but I'll touch on that a little bit later. The second role that we play is to generate carbon credits, and I think that's both from nature and technology-based solutions. So if I take Malaysia, clearly for us, we want to be able to develop a domestic carbon market ecosystem. And for Malaysia, we are the 17th most biodiverse country in the world, and we are the third highest in ASEAN in terms of forest area. So today we have about 446 palm oil mills which present a case for carbon projects, essentially an opportunity for us to be able to come up with methane-type carbon projects and carbon capture projects. And I think nearly 80% of our GHG emissions come from energy sector. So this clearly also gives an opportunity for us to decarbonize. We have also identified 46 trillion cubic feet of potential storage of depleted gas reservoirs, and this presents an opportunity for us to have carbon capture projects, storage projects, and this will clearly give an opportunity for us to generate carbon credits. So if we also look at the additional role for BCX, BCX plays a very critical role in terms of thought leadership. We regularly engage with national and supranational policymakers, and quite clearly we engage with the industry players through our Malaysia, through our platforms, which is one of them was recently held, the Malaysia Carbon Market Forum, where we actually consistently receive strong support from our ecosystem partners. As I mentioned earlier, liquidity is a key challenge. So for us, the voluntary carbon market today is a small fraction of the global carbon market, and which is driven primarily by the compliance mechanism and other national schemes. Now, compounding this effect is clearly the limited demand of carbon projects out there. And I think the challenge that we have is also the limited demand in terms of carbon credits being issued. So I think for Malaysia, we are looking to address this through our climate change bill, RUPIN, and also the National Carbon Market Policy, which we hope will actually support a compliance and voluntary mechanism. And I hope that will come in place sometime 2026. So the real momentum in carbon markets today for us will come from countries being able to fully roll out clear and trusted mechanisms for cross-border carbon trading. Now you mentioned, Bushinta, on credit in terms of credit integrity. And we recognize that's very, very key in order to safeguard against greenwashing. Credit integrity is clearly focused on what we call meta standards for us, which are established by various bodies. One is ICVCM, which is the Integrity Council for Voluntary Carbon Markets, and also CORSIA for specific industries, so for CORSIA for the aviation industry. And at the national level, credit integrity is fostered through sovereign-backed carbon standards, and amongst the ASEAN member states, Indonesia and Thailand have established national carbon standards. So to help solve some of these supply and demand issues faced not just by Malaysia but also across the ASEAN member states, clearly Bursa Malaysia conceptualized the ASEAN Common Carbon Framework, which we hope to be able to spur the market. So I will touch on it as we go along.
Yes. And I think similar to you, Indonesia is now underway, finally. I think we just, the regulation has just been issued by our president. So we are very happy that we're finally going into this, the same direction. So I want to now move to Dato Abdul Razif Dawood. How should I address you?
Just Razif is fine. Yeah.
Razif?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Razif. So we talk about the ASEAN Power Grid. Honestly, there are still a lot of skepticism. Is it really going to happen? It's such an ambitious project, right? Amazing. But it is real. It is there. But how do you feel, what do you think are really mainly the challenges, and also how do we see this deeper cross-border collaboration between ASEAN, specifically prioritizing, not prioritizing the more of the national interests, right? This is always the, I mean, I guess it's the interest for everyone, but how do you see this happen? How do you play the role in really establishing the ASEAN power grid?
Let me speak from my heart. Yeah. Before that, I'd just like to share what happened a week ago here in Kuala Lumpur during the Minister of Energy Summit, we call AMIM, ASEAN Minister of Energy meeting. 10 ASEAN member states. They boldly agree on the new enhanced MOU on APG, which reflects on the shifting on the ground. I can understand your frustration. This we call dreams, been decades. Yeah, been conceived, 30 years ago. Yeah, this APG. It was an important project, but again, what happened last week? The 10 ASEAN member states agreed to move toward implementation instead of, aspirations and so on. So they're going to set up important task forces looking at the challenges of regulatory issue across border and technical issue as well as the commercial issue on this designs of the future market exchange like similar to Bursa in future. But the other thing is important is this ADB and World Bank initiative. We call APG financing initiative. Yes. So this multilateral development bank as a starter, they're going to of course invite the private and banks and to participate in this looking at bankability and feasibility studies, of course, toward financing this project. It's a massive, hundreds of billions USD up to 2050. But again, there are many issues, you are right. And, when you talk about energy, it's involved security, yes, and as well as sovereignty of, countries, and as well as issue of, it can be a political issue. But again, I think what we unify ASEAN member states is important is energy security. You heard the speech by President this morning. Energy security is such important. Even the Prime Minister of Australia, energy security is such important. So you never know. Something might strike your country, earthquake, natural disasters, climate change, and man-made disasters. And who are you going to ask for help if not your neighbors, your trusted neighbors? So when you have integrated system, wires across ASEAN member states, you can have standby and backup emergency plan and to restore your energy. Look what happened in Spain, in developed country, well-integrated country. They also, this thing will happen. So we're not going to repeat the same mistake that happened, in other parts of the world. So energy security is, of course, you'll talk about sustainability, energy transition. You have a lot of resources, wind resources in Vietnam, in Myanmar, in northern of Thailand, but we don't have wind in here, Malaysia. But we have plenty of solar irradiance in this country. But wind, one day, wind will not blow all the time in Myanmar or in Vietnam. But we can send over, solar PV energy through the ASEAN power grid to light up, factory, to power factory in Vietnam and so on. So this is how we can achieve energy transition. So you talk about economic benefit, massive capital needed. This is basic infrastructure. You talk about 30 years lagging behind, massive. You have to accelerate this. You need a lot of transformers, switch gears, and wires, and all this equipment to rewire the ASEAN power grid, to interconnect between national grid and so on. It's a massive undertaking. And so we can't do it alone. We need, dialogue partners to help us in terms of technologies and, advanced financing and so on and so forth. So to go back this commitment, the solution is, I think we have seen high political commitment demonstrated last week by the ASEAN member state. And of course, I'm sure some kind of announcement going to be made by the Leaders Summit here in Kuala Lumpur on APG, ASEAN Power Grid, how to move forward, how to implement this. We have all the challenges, but I don't think that is a big issue. We have proven, we have a pilot project, Laos, Thailand, Malaysia, and Singapore. You can wheel a power over from Laos. We have tested these frameworks, taxes and all this technical standardization, harmonization, codes and operation and so on. So it can be done. I mean, it's all, we have the willpower, the will, the political will, we have human capital, the financial capital, and
you sound very optimistic, sir. What kind of timeline are we talking about here? I hope we'll still be around.
This new action plan, you're talking about new business plan 2030 from next year, 2060. So we're going to implement this, some pilot project. I think you had an announcement from Vietnam and Malaysia and Singapore. They're going to, evacuate offshore wind farm from Vietnam all the way to Malaysia and Singapore. And I think Indonesia and Malaysia are going to initiate this. I mean, they are doing the studies now between Malacca and Sumatra and upgrading, I think last week, EGATS and Tenaga. These two utilities they're going to upgrade. And another link from Singapore to Malaysia. So this is happening. I mean, this is getting more traction, more momentum. I'm not being Oprah show here, but you know, I'm pragmatic because I've been in the industry for over 30 years. I've seen this is different. This is new momentum, new impetuses. Energy security, environmental sustainability, green energy. We need green. Many people need green. We have not talked about AI yet. So a massive data center required. They want green energy. Yeah.
Definitely. So very good, and we will all be waiting for this. I mean, from this moment. But I want to now touch maybe on a different subject, which Vince will share more on this inclusive cross-border digital payment Asia. I mean, everybody's talking about this, Vince. But how does Dana actually contribute to this strengthening of this ASEAN payment system?
Sure. I think one thing it's that it's the key point why we want to have this regional payment connectivities, right? I think it's very important to highlight that currently the digital economy around the ASEAN, it's already about $1.2 trillion. That's across only the ASEAN 6. If you talk about the overall ASEAN, I mean, it's one, I think it's bigger than that, and the potential will be a lot bigger than that. So the problem is, without these regional connectivities, every country has its own, basically, domestic rail. So it's unlocking domestic potential in terms of SMEs, in terms of the retail markets, but it will be much more stronger if we are able to interconnect this regionally. And then that's what has been done recently by this QR regional payment connectivities, coming up with Project Nexus, that not only it will connect the retails, but it's also connect the businesses. So in fact, just now, when we talk about, you know, carbon credit, when we talk about power grid connectivities across the regions, I think it will be much more stronger if we have the payment system to support those both. And I think that's the future, and then that's the part of the plan of this regional payment connectivities. And one thing that company like Dana has been supportive is that, one, of course, we make more of our local SMEs, the local users, populations to be on this rail, right? As we mentioned, we already cover about 200 million users, and then each countries would have its own. Like Malaysia has TNGD, right, for example. Philippines has GCash, Thailand has TrueMoney, and then there is so many other players in the regions that has making this works. And our role is to make sure that we also working with the regulators is to really interconnect each other through one standard. I think that's the key here. Because of the standardizations, because of the collaboration between the central banks, between each countries, everyone will have its the same standard. So then interconnectivity, it's becoming seamless. And once that happens, so we're starting to see some unlocked potentials. To start with, we'll give examples. So around 143 million tourists traveling all over ASEAN in 2024. And 44% of that tourism is actually come from the ASEAN countries itself. Imagine that everyone is actually now able to pay using local currencies to all this market seamlessly. That's to begin with. Later on, we'll also have interconnectivities with the e-commerce. We have interconnectivities with some of the exchanges as well. So that's unlock full potentials of what this can happens, what this can do. So the more we see in this, the more eager we are to actually participate, the more we are to open up. So now the ASEAN payment connectivities are expanding beyond that. We started to work with countries such as China, countries such as Japan, coming at Korea and India. So that will unlock more and more, and then that will, in the end, like benefits the whole ASEAN country. So we're very supportive, and we are very optimistic on how this really can unlock the ASEAN power.
And this is the same with your counterparts in other ASEAN countries.
Yes, they're all the same.
They're all talking the same language.
Yes.
We're all excited for this.
Exactly.
Good, good. You know, both, all three of you have really come up with, you know, your pitch on the more high level on all these three initiatives. But I wanted to go back and ask you to really go more, perhaps deeper in terms of Dato. How is this ASEAN common carbon framework actually works? Because standards, you know, imagine ASEAN. We don't even talk about we just talk about ASEAN with standard. How give us, enlighten us. How do you really see this working?
Thank you. The ACCF clearly is going to be a game changer. What it does is it transforms a fragmented national carbon markets into a unified, interoperable regional system. So if you look at today, the 11 countries of ASEAN, including Timor-Leste, emitted about 1.87 gigatons in 2022 of CO2, which is around 5% of worldwide emission. But the region today holds an immense potential to be able to supply high-quality carbon credits. So if you look at, for example, nature-based projects alone can avoid about 835 million tons of CO2 each year, and to be able to protect 25 million hectares of biodiversity hotspots. So if we, as ASEAN is able to leverage on this, ASEAN's carbon market can clearly unlock trillions in cumulative revenue by 2050, and we can also create millions of green jobs. We can also reduce at least remove 1 gigaton of CO2 annually. So if we're able to address these critical barriers, so there are three critical barriers that we need to look at for ACCF. Number one, the lack of common standards. So we spoke about the inability to have that common standard, and I think that's critical. Secondly, we need to address the limited liquidity. There's insufficient liquidity out there for carbon projects and carbon credits to be issued. And thirdly, transaction cost is high. So how do we address this? So maybe a step back, ACCF is actually operationalized from ASEAN's strategy on carbon neutrality, which was actually endorsed during Indonesia's chairmanship.
During our year. This is why we're very familiar with it.
During Indonesia's chairmanship in 2023. And it specifically operationalizes strategies to increase market liquidity and also carbon projects through interoperable carbon market and also harmonized carbon standards. So what happens today is we have carbon standards, but it needs methodologies for us to be able to develop and verify those carbon projects. And these methodologies takes time. So to fast track this process, ACCF, the ASEAN Common Carbon Framework, suggests that countries mutually recognize each other's methodologies. So that's what will happen. And when we recognize each other's through mutual recognition of each other's methodology, it expedites the process. Each ASEAN country will retain its own sovereignty over its own domestic rules, and while having that common standard and common methodology. And that in turn will allow us to have fungibility in terms of the credits within the ASEAN countries. So that is the principle that the ASEAN Common Carbon Framework is working on. And I think in order to proceed in terms of standards, we also adhere to recognized meta standards, which I mentioned earlier. And clearly, if we look at how Bloomberg and Aipf recently came out with the research to say that credit supply is projected to rise 20 to 35-fold by 2050. So this clearly gives us assurance that ASEAN will be a very key region in terms of supplying high quality carbon credits. So just to touch on, so at COP29 last year, 5 carbon associations in ASEAN signed a memorandum of collaboration to operationalize this framework. And although still in early stages, it has received a formal acknowledgement by regional and also international organizations. AITA recognized EU ASEAN Business Council and also recently World Economic Forum. And recently at the 57th ASEAN Economic Ministers meeting in September in KL, 2 of the 12 priority initiatives implemented by ASEAN-backed ACCF was one of them. And also 2 weeks ago, in conjunction with BCX, with Bursa Carbon Exchange, 3rd Malaysia Capital Market Forum, Bloomberg released a fact sheet to acknowledge the initiatives by ACCF. So I think, but let's go back to why does regional decarbonization matter? Why does ACCF matter for regional decarbonization? So I think clearly ACCF aspires to unlock carbon projects within ASEAN. And I think that's very important.
I just want to stop there a little
Sure.
bit. On unlocking carbon projects, are there actually transactions happening now?
So I guess today there are already projects out there, but we need to be able to drive more projects. And I think the ability to come out with a common carbon framework which harmonizes methodologies, which have uniformity, which will help us to be able to interoperable those carbon projects within. So we are able to issue credits and be able to trade amongst the
What
ASEAN
you're saying
countries.
is we're starting, but these are small in terms of scale.
In terms of scale, it is growing, but I think we can do more as ASEAN to be able to drive this. Yeah, so I think that's the first. Number 2, time to market. So the ability for us to be able to deliver carbon credits with the ACCF, with the framework that we come out with ACCF, we should be able to do this faster. And I think that's very important because we are racing against time. So I think that's the second point. And I think the third area is to be able not just to link in terms of the ASEAN countries, but I think what's important is when we are able to have an interoperable ASEAN market, the focus is also to be able to link our markets to the developed nations. And I think what the end objective here is to be able to help climate financing flow from the global north to the global south. I think that's very, very clear. So in short, ACCF is, is a game changer in turning ASEAN's carbon market from a fragmented market into a credible, connected, and investment-ready ecosystem. And it bridges between the national ambition and the overall regional ambition.
I think we're clearly, supportive of this whole ACCF. I think our question has always been more on actually execution and really on the national, level plus the regional. I mean, this is always because every country has their own system and regulatory, and this is actually the same with other initiatives that we're doing in ASEAN. It's always between national interests and ASEAN as a region, right? So I wanted to touch with you, Razif, on terms of how, in practical terms, how does this ASEAN Power Grid contribute to a more economic growth and the regional integration by really lowering system costs and opening new investment opportunity to the energy infrastructure?
Before I answer your question, Bu Shinta, I just want to share with Dato' that the last week meeting, the Minister of Energy has instructed ACE to look at this renewable energy certificate framework. We need this framework in order for us to, have this cross-border electricity with the green attribute, which is acceptable to all ASEAN member states. So hopefully, within a year, we're going to have a common REC standard. ASEAN
common REC. Oh, wow.
ASEAN way.
Wow.
Which is acceptable to the ASEAN member states. Yeah. I mean, this is one way of cooperation. Of course, I respect there are international standards and so on, but could be the ASEAN way of doing things. But give it a try. Yeah. And you know what? We need each other. We need payments. We need exchange. We need have these billions of APG project need access to the sustainability fund from Western countries and so on. But again, the importance of electricity, without electricity, those won't work, Even second, what happened to Amazon? Not because of electricity, but something else. But imagine, lights off, yeah. So it's such an important element. Prime Minister of Australia mentioned energy infrastructure. So this is critical. I just want to share with you some numbers, because I like to share what ministers agree. This formula of 30, 45, 40, the 30% target of the TPES, the primary energy, by 2030, 5 years from now, and 45% of renewable energy installed capacity for the ASEAN. At the 2030, we run the numbers, we should have around 700 gigawatt of total installed capacity mix. So 40% of that, equivalent to about 300 gigawatt of installed capacity. There's a lot of money to put up the solar and wind and geothermal and so on and so forth. And a lot of carbon, at this 300 gigawatts of installed capacity. And annually, we should add 25 gigawatt capacity, or installed capacity. And of course, 40% of, we have to look at the demand side also, energy intensity. We have to manage the waste, leakage of energy to make it more efficient. And the amount of a trillion that required to reach, we run one scenario we call carbon neutrality by 2050, with all these generations and wires and network and so on. We require close to $4 trillion US to finance all this project to reach carbon neutrality. In our flagship Outlook report last year that we're going to publish in the Outlook next year, number 9. So all these important, and Ibu, let me share with you, we have 7 levers marching toward energy transition 2050. We have, of course, APG, Trans-ASEAN gas pipeline, coal and clean coal technology, energy efficiency and conservation, renewable energy, of course, regional planning and policy, and not to forget the civilian nuclear power. Is that also an option by the ASEAN member state? And so your question on the practical step that we are taking, we are doing. We are busy actually doing the feasibility studies. World Bank and have financed important feasibility studies to look at the bankability and feasibility of. We have identified about 18 interconnectivity projects across ASEAN member states. So we are looking at those results, and of course, we have to wait the decision by the ASEAN member state. So those are the promising projects. And you talk about utilization, I'm sure. If you build this infrastructure, this is going to be highly utilized asset infrastructure.
How, I understand that, of course, this is all good, but how would you do it differently? In other words, if you have the opportunity now to sit with all these ASEAN leaders, right, championing this effort for quite some time. You've seen what works, what hasn't worked. And everybody said, we agree, we are committed. All leaders said, we want to do it as fast as we could, right? What would you recommend the leaders to do immediately?
Well, Mr. President, Mr. Prime Minister, the saving that you can gain by sharing billions of saving. So you can use those savings to finance your other infrastructure project, water, hospital, education, and so on. If you share together, that's one benefit. I mentioned about energy security. What will be the cost of the blackout? That's massive. 1 hour blackout. The value of economy is so high, so dependent. You're talking about decarbonization. You're going to electrify everything, from car, train, industry, processes, to bring down the carbon. So we are getting more and more dependent on electricity. So we need strong grid. And we're going to dependent on highly intermittent renewable energy, weather-dependent renewable energy, wind and solar. So you have to strengthen your grid. You need massive investment to strengthen, to stabilize the grid.
And you work with each, of course, on the working level with each of the countries, right?
We are the secretary.
And I'm sure there's some countries that's harder to work with than some others. Is this your job also to make sure everybody is going to be on the same line?
Well, I'm an engineer, but I'm learning the rope, become a diplomat. I'm an energy, what they call energy diplomacy. Well, of course, we have to find a win-win. Shared prosperity, this ASEAN 2045 economic, declaration. So I'm sure it's going to be win-win. It's going to be shared prosperity, and we can enrich our neighbors and so on. It is, no one will be left behind, as speech said by the President Prabowo this morning.
Good luck. I hope you will stay in this position for a while to make sure that this is actually happening, right?
Well, my contract is 3 years.
Okay, Vince. So tell us more, more on the financial inclusion side, the MSME side. They're really going to, of course, get lots of benefits from this cross-border payment system. Share with us on that.
Yes, it's very important to address this because, in all ASEAN countries, there are probably most countries, MSMEs contribute a very large chunks, or if not, some countries even, the majority of the employment. That's one. Two, when I take a look in all the ASEAN countries, it's between 40 to 60% of the GDP are actually from MSMEs. So unlocking them, it's critical. It's becoming our the most sustainable initiative that we can have. And when you unlock them, now the market becomes bigger. So ASEAN is what? 600 million population? 700 now, right? 700, close to 700 million populations. And every country before that is basically, if you just focus on, like, let's say Malaysia, right? 35 million, Singapore, 8 million. But you talk now ASEAN, unlocking the full ASEAN, 600 million as your customer base. That's automatically just give every single MSMEs, every single businesses opportunities for a very large markets. And this digital payment connectivity not only just unlock the potentials, but also unlock the efficiencies. So I also don't want to be left behind, right? So we also are green. So digital payment inherently it's actually very green because what it replaces when you talk about cash, when you talk about the logistics required to handle all of this traditional payment infrastructures, digital payment rails, especially the mobile payments rails, is actually much more efficient compared to all of that. We, internally as a company, we've been measuring ourselves. Our transactions per transaction energy footprints is much more efficient than any instrument existing in the market. In fact, if you talk about even compared to the previous digital rail, when you talk about card rail, we are 3 times more efficient. And our efficiency grow over time. So it's because of that, so because of the efficiency that we see in the benefit, we actually produce an ESG report. And then now we've seen that every other players in the region is doing the same thing as well. So 1, it's unlock the market. 2, it's actually provide efficiency. 3, this is very important when we talk about the collaboration within the regional ASEAN, especially. All of this potential will not work if not we are not protecting the ecosystem, that's a major issue these days. Once you go more digital, there's a threat. And now the threat is not only domestic, but globally. When you talk about scam, when you talk about fraud, when you talk about cyber attacks. By integrating, by collaborating with each of the ASEAN country, we automatically protect our whole ecosystem. So when we work together, when we actually build standardization, transparencies, fast reactions to any sort of a payment, we protect ourselves better as the region. And if we do that well, I cannot imagine what would the ASEAN be. I think the full potential of ASEAN will be accelerated so much faster. I think that's the key here. So it's not just talking about, interconnectivity, but it's also actually talking about resiliency and talking about unlocking the potential for the region.
Very good, Vince. I think definitely, resiliency is very important. Inclusivity is very important. And I think you're bringing a subject of sustainability into this whole cross-border payment, which is something quite rare. People don't look at it that way, the way each companies are now also driving this. So very good. I want to have the opportunity to open up to the floor if there is any questions. I know everybody's been trying. Any questions from the floor? Yes, please. Can you please introduce yourself and maybe the question addressing to who? Brian. Please, Brian.
Thank you, Shinta, so much. Fascinating panel. Brian McFeeters, the CEO of the U.S. ASEAN Business Council. I want to ask a question probably mainly directed to Dato' Razib about the ASEAN Power Grid. Very interested in the ASEAN Power Grid, and the member companies of U.S. ASEAN Business Council are very interested in it. I have to maybe be a bit provocative, though, and say I've developed a bit of skepticism because looking into the ASEAN Power Grid, the 18 connections that you referred to, my impression is that the main success story of ASEAN Power Grid is LTMS, right? Laos, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, which, if I understand it, is driven by Singapore's appetite for renewable energy, and so that resulted in the financing to get it done. It seems like so many of the other potential connections are just not there, just not happening. And with respect, I would say I went to the Energy Ministers Conference not this year, but last year, and there was an announcement that the World Bank and ADB were going to do a bunch of funding. So sort of like, I guess my point would be, from the business point of view, where I sit now, there's a sense of, well, the ASEAN member states have not decided how to do these projects, therefore there's nothing for the business community to bid on or to act on, so everybody's just waiting. I'm sorry for that maybe skeptical point of view, but I just want to get your reaction.
Thank you, Brian. And this is representing also the U.S. investors. So that means there's a lot of interest, Brian, from the U.S. companies to do this? Please, Yazid.
Yeah, thank you. I know Brian very well.
Everybody knows Brian.
Thank you for USTDA resumption of this feasibility studies. Thank you, Brian. Thank you to your governments. We're going to continue to finish the feasibility studies between Sumatra and Malacca. There are only 40 kilometers undersea submarine cable, and as well as Sabah to East Kalimantan, with Sabah electricity with PLN. So those are very promising. You're right about multilateralism between Laos, Thailand, Malaysia, and Singapore. But as we speak, bilaterally, even between this country and Singapore, they are enjoying this energy security, energy emergency, and so on. If you want to monetize those benefits, you can really pay back all those investment. Yeah. I mean, between Singapore and Malaysia, I mean, a couple of weeks ago, there was some pocket of brownout in Kuala Lumpur, if you were in Kuala Lumpur. So, you know, with the help of IGAT, Thailand, because they also have, Malaysia also have interconnected grid with Thailand, HVDC technology and so on. So that will actually save a lot of, you know, economic impact by, you know, black up your economic activities. Again, Brian, just last week, maybe we are going to do a roadshow. I'm sure a lot of convincing that we have to do. We're going to invite, you know, our stakeholders in Jakarta. So we're going to share the new Aipf, the new business plan for the next 5 years. APG is the center of this business plan. You talk about an REC. You know, REC is also an important enabler before you can cross, because Laos can actually, you know, transfer their REC all the way to a Meta data center in Singapore. That's also important to address. So those are the, you know, work that we are doing seriously, and financing. They just announced a couple of weeks in the summit, in the Minister Summit on ADB and World Bank. They just signed MOU, both together. So they're going to have launched this PACE, this working group. They're going to invite the stakeholders to join them and to share. And, you know, AIIB, Beijing also interested to join, Standard Chartered. I think you can see the momentum compared to last year. I would say the political capital. Yeah, we need, you know, we have, I mentioned human capital, financial capital, but we need a political capital. I think this is, you know, new aura, new air of changes on this. I mentioned, Brian, energy security is such an important subject for this region. And, you know, yeah, you talk about capital expenditure. You know, it's a no-brainer, right? This is infrastructure. This is basic necessity that require an energy transition. You have massive 20,000 megawatts of hydro potential in Laos. They only have 7 million people. But massive demand in Singapore, in Bangkok, here in Kuala Lumpur, you know, data center in Johor, they require green energy. But we can complement each other. You know, this load center, fragmented load center and resources, geothermal in Indonesia and wind in Vietnam, in Laos and so on. They have massive potential of wind. So if we can interconnect, imagine you can have your factory anywhere in ASEAN, you can have a power plant anywhere in ASEAN, you can trade with each other, spot market or even long-term contract and so on. So I went to Brussels a couple of weeks ago. I told, I think the entity called NTSO, like a grid operator, I told them, look, I'll be sincere with them. So we look at you as a back in the future. Yeah. So they started, I think, same time, 30 years ago. European have successfully, you know, built their strong European power grid here. So there are a lot of templates. You're talking about codes and rules and market design. We can adopt those templates. You can accelerate, yeah. I mean, I think to Mr. President and Prime Minister, if you decide tomorrow, we'll do it here.
Very well, very well. I haven't seen any clapping, Lisa, so I'm going to ask everybody to just clap hand to wake you up. I hope everybody stay awake. Any more questions from the floor, please? The lady here, to have a female voice. Can you get a microphone, please? To the lady on the middle.
Thank you, Ibu Sinta, for the opportunity. I'm Rahma, the Advocacy Manager at the Canada ASEAN Business Council. My question is about, like, ASEAN is often under criticism because of its very ambitious initiatives, but maybe lack of actual implementations on the ground. But actually, I think ASEAN Power Grid and cross-border payment is the antithesis to those criticisms, because that's already happening and that's a tangible product of these economic integrations. So my question is for Dato Fadil Muhammad actually, because it's quite different with the ASEAN Power Grid and cross-border payments. I think the format of like a common carbon framework is not an agreement, and since like it's also part of the legacy project of the ASEAN back Malaysia, do you think that this initiative will still continue after the chairmanship of ASEAN back Malaysia ends this year, and will it really make like actual change in the market? And if yes, like you mentioned about you collaborate with the EU ASEAN Business Council, but we from the Canada ASEAN Business Council, Canada is also very good in terms of its sustainable finance initiatives. So how can other partners work more with you on this initiative? That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I think quite clearly there's a lot of will to pull this together. And I think if we take a step back, a lot of this is being driven at the private sector level. And I mentioned earlier, these are 5 associations that's come together, signed a memorandum of collaboration to be able to drive this initiative forward. I think clearly for us to make this a success, and this has only been 18 months type timeline that has just come through. I think to make this a success, we will need some level of, we will need endorsement from ASEAN with, and I think that's the next objective here, to be able to get each member state to sign off on this and to be able to granularize it at operating level, to come out with the methodologies, to talk about the interoperability, and to look at the policies. And I think this is real because every country have net zero targets, and I think every ASEAN member state would like to be able to see that interoperability for us to be able to have greater level of liquidity. So I am truly confident that this will drive, this initiative will continue to be garnered forward after Malaysia's chairmanship. And I think other ASEAN member states are also vested to ensure that this is a success. In terms of collaboration, this will come naturally once we see the market being developed, carbon projects being launched, and I think when we see greater level of liquidity in carbon credits, it will be a natural connectivity to the other associations and to be able to connect, as I mentioned, to drive a lot more liquidity and financing capability from the global north to the global south. So I think this is something that will build on itself. There is will and there is commitment, and I think as far as I see, governments are also engaging quite clearly. So there will be the need for us to see this through. So I think it will cross and it will be post Malaysia's chairmanship. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else would like? Okay, gentlemen over there, please. I think we can have 1 or 2 more questions.
Good morning. I'm from the Myanmar Chamber of Commerce. I would like to ask 2 questions to the Dato Razib and Dato Muhammad. Yeah. Very fruitful discussion. We are really interested. Based on the Dato Razib explanation, renewable energy ratio can be around 40 to 45% in 2040-45. But my question is the renewable energy is the plant factor is around 20 to 35%. That's why how to mix the power generation to get the stable power plant factor, we need to control 75%. Yeah, that's why for the baseload power, mainly using from the which power generation source, and with the reasonable tariff. Yeah, this is my first question. Second question is the Dato mentioned that for the ASEAN power grid. Yeah, this is a very supportive for the ASEAN countries, and then the multiplier good impact to people and businesses. But for this case, is the funding need the trillion US dollar, but the profit of the transmission is not very good like IPP, power generation. In this regard, can we get support from the development agencies or financial injection from the stock exchange companies for such kind of huge investment amount? Thank you. This is 2 questions. Yeah.
Okay, let's start with you.
Ibu, if you may, I forgot one important instruction by the minister that we're going to complete submarine cable framework, because this is a very important framework. You know, a lot of project require, to lay on the seabed long submarine cable, the crisscrossing, the archipelago and so on. So that's another element that will contribute to the success of the project here. If I understand correctly, battery storage is a game changer. We understand that's technical words, variability of RE or intermittency. So, we need a lot of new technology, but of course, currently lithium-ion storage, but pump hydro storage is also important to mitigate this potential of instability to the grid. And on the return, if I understand you correctly, on the you are right about the capacity of a solar, because solar can, if you every 100 megawatt of solar, you can only declare about 20% of the true installed capacity on your energy mix or your capacity mix. Yeah. So that's why storage is important. If you can store and you can dispatch the energy when the sun is set. Yeah. But on the return, people keep forgetting this enabler, the grid. No matter how fantastic is your project, if you cannot evacuate these resources to the grid and distribute to the end user, it's no point. You keep constraining. You keep the investment will be stranded. So there must be important regime. I call rate-based regime that government will guarantee some kind of return and revenue to the asset owner or the investor or this transmission and distribution grid. Yeah. So there must be a consistency in policy, in frameworks and regulatory and economic regulation and so on. Yeah. So I hope I answer your question on those 2 questions.
Maybe you want to. Yeah.
I think the question for me was relating to the funding side, isn't it? I think that was the question.
Yeah.
And I think clearly a project like the ASEAN Power Grid would require long-term capital, because projects of this nature are long gestation and it will require long-term capital. And I think we're very fortunate that within ASEAN, and I can speak for Malaysia, that we do have long-term investors that are looking to deploy capital into long-term projects, because where there is a return, it will be able to ensure that sustainability of returns. And I think if you also look at it from a wider perspective, today investors and LPs, limited partners, are consistently looking for capital to be deployed into sustainable projects. So one data point I have is that from 2018 to 2024, we see ESG funds or funds which are investing into sustainable projects, type projects, have quadrupled to US $3.2 trillion at the end of 2024 from 2018. So these are testimonies, or these are evidence that there are capital out there, there's liquidity out there looking for assets of this nature. So I think the other bit that I just have to say is that in terms of structuring financing of this nature, you will probably need to look at long-term type instruments. So we'll probably be looking at the bonds and sukuk market to be able to raise. And I think ASEAN will need to collaborate together to be able to fund and come together to finance a project of this nature. Thank you.
If I may, Ibu, that's why ADB World Bank coming with the blended finance.
Blended.
Number 2, we're going to declare this APG as a green project, because this enabler for this renewable energy from one resource center to the load center. And again, this Dato mentioned this opportunity for the certificate. So those money can, those
Renewable
proceeds,
energies,
yeah,
yeah.
those proceeds can be plowed back
Yeah,
into
yeah,
this,
yeah.
you know, with lower return. You can't expect, you know, a double-digit high return on this renewable energy, but you're investing for your children and grandchildren.
That's right. That's right. We
Not
have
for
to
yourself,
go that
yeah.
right. Okay, gentlemen, I think we have our Minister of Investment of Indonesia already attending, so we'll be closing soon. I wanted to perhaps close this from each of you. Of course, this is an ASEAN-Indo-Pacific Forum. This is the third time we're hosting it. Perhaps each of you, maybe starting with you, Vince, can share to the audience, what would you like to see from the partner style, from the partners, the ASEAN partners, you know? How can they be to really strengthening more of the ASEAN plus relationship? So maybe you can give your 3 asks from them, you know, how do you see from your side, from your initiative?
Okay. For us, the initiative is already in place. It's already practical, people already can use it. But the key here is to make sure that we are also protecting it. So make sure it becomes resilience, make sure that we also learn from each other, make sure that we are open, unlocking opportunities to everyone. So because some of the difficulty part is that even though some countries, for example, right, in Indonesia, we are fully standardized. So if you come to Indonesia, for example, if you use any of your applications, or anybody in ASEAN actually comes to Indonesia, that's already interconnected, right, using this RPC. You can go to any merchants, you can go to any outlets, you can go to anywhere, it will work. It's one standard. Some countries still have a different standard domestically. So some interconnectivities might not work. So if we want the ask is we want to make sure that all the standard across the regions, all the collaborations can be done equally, can be done with the same intent that we are unlocking opportunities. And of course, at the end of the day, we want to make sure to protect it together.
Thank you, thank you. Please, Raziv.
Yeah, Ibu, you mentioning about our dialogue partners, our wish list.
Yes, yes.
Australian and
yes,
European.
We have the Australian here, Canadian, US.
I got 3 wishes handy here that I put up a note here. Number 1 is the capital, financial capital.
Money.
Money, yeah. And
so
of course,
Brian, bring the money.
Of course, Brian, we will address the political risks. Of course, investment, we fully understand the political risks. We'll address that. And number 2, advanced technologies. Yeah, we welcome. We need, advanced technologies and efficient technologies, and especially green and new renewable energy, new energy technologies. And number 3, the capacity building. This soft spot and framework, governance, structure, and so on, reform, and so on. So those are the 3 wish lists from our side. Thank you.
And finally,
thank you. I have 2 wishes and 1 aspiration. Yeah. So my first wish is that for the ASEAN Common Carbon Framework to be effective, it needs to secure endorsement from ASEAN, and quite clearly, to ensure that mutual recognition of methodologies, interoperability of the carbon markets, enabling policies. This will require policy intervention and support. So that's the first. Secondly, we will need to access multilateral funding, because all the initiatives under the ACCF will require support, and clearly the 5 carbon market associations have limited resources. So that will require support. So those are, and I think for us to be able to roll out all these initiatives for the greater good of ASEAN, we will need the support to come in, including the resources. And thirdly, for ACCF to be ASEAN's operating system for carbon markets, adopted by governments, trusted by businesses, and connected to global standards. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And with that, we will close this panel, and we all realize that what we've heard today reinforced really the key message that regional cooperation is not an optional. I think this is really an essential for ASEAN to be able to achieve sustainable, inclusive, and resilient growth. And of course, the support of our dialogue partners is crucially needed. And I think the three aspects that I would like to just close with, the policy coherence, the investment and innovation, I think, and the trust. We forgot the trust and collaboration. I think trust is important, right? So gentlemen, thank you very much. And we hope for a successful forum also ahead next year. We hope to have another of this session again. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Ms. Shinta Kamdani and our distinguished panelists, please come together, center of the stage for a photography session. We will count down for the photograph in big smiles. 3, 2, and 1. And thank you once again to Ms. Shinta Kamdani, our moderator, as well as to all of our distinguished panelists for sharing their insights with us in the panel discussion. A big round of applause for our speakers.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And ladies and gentlemen, as you had noticed while the panel discussion was going on stage, we have a distinguished guest who have just joined us. He is none other than the Minister of Investment and Downstreaming of the Republic of Indonesia, head of the Indonesian Investment Coordinating Board and Chief Executive Officer of Danantara, His Excellency Rosan Roslani. Thank you very much for joining us here today. Ladies and gentlemen, we do have more in store for you, so please do remain in your seats. Now, as we have witnessed in the panel discussions here today, it truly is a reflection of ASEAN's growing commitment to transform shared aspirations into real collaboration. A reminder that regional progress is built not only through policies, but also through the partnerships and trusts that sustain them. Each discussion here today reaffirms the same message, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is that the Indo-Pacific's true strength lies in its ability to connect ideas, people, and economies in ways that are practical and forward-looking. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, we welcome you to please take your seats, as we shall now proceed to the next segment of our agenda. Ladies and gentlemen, please do take your seats. It is now the great honor that we welcome to the stage the Minister of Investment and Downstreaming of the Republic of Indonesia, head of the Indonesian Investment Coordinating Board and Chief Executive Officer of Danantara, His Excellency Rosan Roslani, to deliver his remarks. Let's give a hand, ladies and gentlemen, to welcome His Excellency. We welcome to the stage once again His Excellency Rosan Roslani, Minister of Investment and Downstreaming of the Republic of Indonesia, head of the Indonesian Investment Coordinating Board and Chief Executive Officer of Danantara, to share his remarks.
Good morning, everyone. Well, first of all, I would like to thank Kadin, the chairman, Bapak Anindya Bakri, and also the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for having me here, and also
I would like to thank everyone for taking the time, to listen to my closing remark. Well, and also to Mr. Joy Concepcion, the chair of ASEAN Business Advisory Council of Philippines, and all participant industry leaders and dialogue partners. Well, it is definitely, again, it's an honor to share the concluding reflection on the forum that has reinforced ASEAN commitment to inclusivity and sustainability under the Malaysia chairmanship. Over the past hours, we haven't just discussed the future, we have charted the path forward to the ASEAN Community Vision 2045. The morning panels focusing on the ASEAN Common Carbon Framework, the ASEAN Power Grid, and cross-border payment are a vital confirmation. Our regional destinies hinge entirely on the speed and synchronization of our execution. The Indo-Pacific is engine of the global economy, accounting for over 60% of global GDP and a significant share of the world trade. Indo-Pacific importance is evident in its continued attraction of the capital, with ASEAN alone estimated to have received $225 billion or a 15% share of global foreign direct investment inflow in 2024. ASEAN is strategically positioned as the core of this dynamic region, possessing the unique opportunity to lead, maintain regional stability, and foster an inclusive model of growth that benefit the international community. Our guiding principles, which is non-negotiable, is ASEAN centrality. This means ASEAN must be the essential, honest leader, the platform that manages different interests and keeps the established rule-based system intact. As the largest economy in Southeast Asia, Indonesia accounts for 41% of ASEAN population and 35% of its economy. Indonesia is committed and ready to play a bigger role. Indonesia, we still manage to have economic growth about 5%, and mostly ASEAN countries also have managed to have an economic growth above 5, 6, or even 7%, which is, compared to the other part of the world, is excellent number. But we're not stopping here. To realize the vision of Golden Indonesia 2045, we are setting out a higher ambition to even have an economic growth to reach 8% over the next 3 years. The ultimate proof of ASEAN centrality in action is the RCEP, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. RCEP is the largest free trade agreement in the world, connecting 15 economies that together represent close to 30% of the global GDP and the 30% of global population. ASEAN serves not only a passive participant, but as a driver, initiating the agreement and guiding negotiation process to reconcile the diverse interests of all members. However, the RCEP is structurally complete but functionally incomplete. The data from Aipf brief tell us a critical story. Currently, only about 20% of the trade among RCEP signature is actually intra-RCEP. This represents an enormous 80% gap, a massive unmaximized potential. Our main task is changing. We are no longer just the negotiators who draft agreement. We have to become the top implementers who put those agreements into action. To maximize the sustained real income growth projected by the World Bank for our bloc, we must prioritize 3 actions: standardizing our trade rules, enhancing physical and digital connectivity, and attracting strategic high-quality investment. This brings us to the first core theme of this forum: sustainability. Operationalizing the IOIP's commitment to the UN Sustainable Development Goals require mobilizing private capital for green cross-border infrastructure. two legacy projects, the ASEAN Power Grid and the ASEAN Common Carbon Framework, are essential components of this ambition. First, the ASEAN Power Grid is indispensable for regional energy security and integration. Modern flexible grids and increased interconnection are essential to accelerate renewables, projecting that solar and wind generation must rise from just 4% today to 20 to 25% of our power mix by 2030. Second, the ambitious transition requires trusted financial infrastructure. This is the mandate of ASEAN Common Carbon Framework. Developed to address market fragmentation across the region, the ACCF is designed to standardize practices, promote mutual recognition of methodologies, and build regional talent to ensure market integrity. The recent exchange of Memorandum of Collaboration among Carbon Market Association of Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, and Thailand at COP29 symbolized the unified strategic push forward carbon neutrality. As the Minister of Investment and Downstream Industry, I assure you that Indonesia is providing a solid, measurable national contribution to this vision by implementing our vigorous downstreaming industry policy. We are shifting from merely exporting raw material to building domestic capacity to capture higher value-added part of the global supply chains. The policy strategically targets the production of electric vehicles, renewable energy, and semiconductors. Our downstream industry alone attracted almost 27 billion, growing by impressive 58.1% year-on-year and contributing about 30.1% of our total investment. By focusing investment on this critical green value chains, we are locking global partners into long-term high-value regional production network, strengthening the RCEP functional utility, and increasing ASEAN strategic indispensability in the global economy. The second core theme, inclusivity, demand that the economic dividend of this architecture are shared equitably across the demography and enterprises. The ASEAN Digital Economy Framework Agreement is set to fully integrate ASEAN digital market, which possess a global merchandise value of around 330 to 360 billion in 2025 and projected to reach $1 trillion in 2030. This agreement aims to harmonize digital trade rules and facilitate consistent cross-border data flows across the region. Finally, true inclusivity means empowering the foundation of our economy, our micro, small, and medium enterprise. MSME are the backbone of ASEAN's economy, constituting more than 90% of business establishment across the RCEP participating countries. As also the CEO of Danantara Indonesia, our newly established sovereign wealth fund, I also would like to emphasize our strong commitment to supporting the potential collaboration in Indo-Pacific and among ASEAN member states. Danantara Indonesia is a sovereign wealth fund established to consolidate state asset and also investment. The main goal to support Indonesia economic growth, attract international investors, promote long-term and sustainable development. We currently managing of total asset about $1 trillion, which is more and consists more than 1,000 state-owned enterprise under our portfolio. This include the areas such as electricity, oil and gas, seaport, airport, telco, in all the various different sector. We are also recently just launching one of the program, which is waste to energy, and also and many other impactful projects. As we conclude, ASEAN underscores that inclusivity must be the cornerstone of the prosperity for the ASEAN and Indo-Pacific region. Our diversity is our greatest strength, unifying us and generating vast opportunity. In the face of global fragmentation and challenging investment environment, the resilient foreign direct investment inflows that ASEAN continues to attract validate the stability and also transparency of our role-based framework. ASEAN doesn't seek just all capital volume. We demand quality foreign direct investment. We invite partners who adhere strictly to the principle of inclusivity and sustainability that define the AIP. We must move forward to build a future where growth and sustainability are inseparable. By strengthening regional connectivity, increasing green investment, and driving innovation, we can forge as Indo-Pacific that is resilient, cooperative, and sustainable for all future generations. May we all continue to work toward a future-ready ASEAN. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency Rosan Roslani, for sharing your remarks. We are now honored to invite the Chair of the ASEAN Business Advisory Council 2026 and founder of Go Negocio, Mr. Joey Concepcion, to deliver his closing remarks.
His Excellency Minister Rosan Roslani, ASEAN-backed Indonesia, Anin Bakri, ASEAN-backed Indonesia, a good friend, Dino Vega. Basically, since I arrived, everybody has been telling me that I have a lot in my plate in the coming days. I've been the chair of ASEAN the first time around with President Duterte when he rose to power in that time in the Philippines. Being a member of the council and chair, it's a lot of work. In fact, the other day after our meetings, I sat down with 10 people in a table, and they ended up finding me snoring in a chair. So that's how intense we are in these council meetings and trying to find ways on how we can make ASEAN more powerful in a sense. You know, when we hosted the ASEAN in 2017 in Manila, it was all about traffic. Many of the people there were concerned about the traffic and all of these things. So we have to make our objective very clear with our own citizens, no? Especially many of the ASEAN countries are not as wealthy as Indonesia. We are struggling to move up the ladder. And that is why I've been committed in working with two presidents, President Duterte as an advisor on MSME, entrepreneurship, and of course today under President Marcos with the same objective of helping MSMEs. Over the past few days in this ASEAN gathering, I've always emphasized that big business cannot exist and grow without a vibrant economy. And bulk of the players in that vibrant economy are our micro and small and medium enterprises. And that's why after the hosting in 2017, we did not stop. We continued. ASEAN is not meant to be a show. It's meant to be the beginning of some change. And so when we now, under this administration, Tan Sri Nazir, who is the ABAC chair, you don't see traffic, but you see less cars, which means somewhere around the side, not many people can go out of their homes because of all of this security. But that's part of a big event like this. So, prosperity for all has been my mantra, to really find ways on how to uplift the lives of these poor people. And the only way is that people like yourself who are successful in business, you should give back. Yes, maybe we go and say prayer, but the solution there is we have to mentor our MSMEs. So after the first hosting of the ASEAN in the Philippines in 2017, we continued, but this time mobilizing under another brand called Go Negosyo, a foundation that I created to see to it that what we had agreed on 2017 continues until this very day. We have a lot of business chambers, and we called on the private sector to help, basically provide access to these micro entrepreneurs, big, following the 3 M's, which is mentorship, money, and market. The most important 3 M's, which will help an entrepreneur grow, scale up. Poverty cannot be solved by the government alone. Poverty can be solved if private sector and the government, hand in hand, work together to upskill, to provide capital, to provide them knowledge in digitalization so that they can promote their products, not through newspapers, which were expensive, and now nobody puts ads anymore in newspapers, but through social media, content creation, creating more people to have that ability to market their own products on social media at a fraction of the cost of what we used to pay when we put it in television. So the future, to me, of what we do will spell out from all of these meetings that we have. We fly to different countries, we enjoy the company of new friends, but the person in your country who's suffering has to dream. As my father said, dream the impossible. And yes, it is possible for these dreams to happen, but we have to be a component to that as mentors. So the power of mentorship is really there. And I always tell this to many businessmen. We can create wealth for ourselves, but what are we going to do when we all move to the next life? Maybe your wife, when you're dead, will take over all the wealth. We don't want that to happen. They can take their fair share. But what has to happen is we share whatever we have done in our life, success, creating more wealth, but share it with those at the bottom of the pyramid so that they too can attend the ASEAN events that we continue to host annually. So again, to our host, which is Indonesia, and next year, people have been telling me that I'm going to have hell. It's going to be tough, but I'm used to it. This will be the second time that I will be hosting it. The Philippines is definitely going to open the doors to everyone. And it's going to be fun in the Philippines, believe me. You will definitely have fun. Clean fun. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Joy Concepcion. We'd like to invite you to please remain on stage for a group photograph. Ladies and gentlemen, we would now like to invite to the stage His Excellency Rosan Roslani, Minister of Investment and Downstreaming of the Republic of Indonesia, Head of the Indonesian Investment Coordinating Board and Chief Executive Officer of Danantara. We'd also like to invite Mr. Anindya Bakri, Chair of the ASEAN Business Advisory Council, Indonesia, and Chairman of the Indonesian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Kadin, Indonesia. And also to join us on stage, we'd like to invite all ASEAN Bar Council members to please join us on stage for a group photograph. And again, we shall count down for this photograph in 3, 2, and 1. Big smiles. Thumbs up, why not? And there we have it. Thank you very much to our distinguished guests, His Excellency Rosan Roslani. Thank you to Mr. Anindya Bakri. Thank you as well to all of the ASEAN-Pac Council members. And thank you, Mr. Joey Concepcion, as well. Now, with that, ladies and gentlemen, to all of our distinguished guests, as we conclude the ASEAN-Indo-Pacific Forum 2025, we wish to express our deepest appreciation to all leaders, distinguished guests, panelists, moderators, and delegates for being part of this meaningful exchange of ideas and collaboration. Your valued contribution, insights, and engagement have played a pivotal role in advancing dialogue, fostering regional cooperation, and strengthening frameworks for resilient economic and cross-border collaboration across ASEAN and the Indo-Pacific. We would also like to extend our thank you to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Indonesia and the Indonesian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Kadin, Indonesia, the ASEAN Business Advisory Council, Malaysia, the Kuala Lumpur Business Club, and Dana, Indonesia, the Economic Research Institute of ASEAN and East Asia Area, and AIPF 2025's official knowledge partner. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, lunch is now served in the foyer. By all means, please help yourself. And with that, we look forward to a continued partnership and meaningful progress in the years ahead. Have a lovely afternoon. Thank you.